Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
That's a little looper that's going to fall in left field for a hit. One up and will throw into second base. And Detroit takes a 1-0 lead.
Bogarts to left center field. That ball is blistered by Xander Bogarts. One hop off the ivy. Forget moving the guy up on a routine grounder. Bogarts scores Maryland a double and takes third on the wayward throw. San Diego strikes first in the wild card. He rips it through the Wrigley wind. Into the brilliant sunshine, and Suzuki ties the score in game one of the wild card series.
Yoshida sends one to center field. Rafaela's going to come in. Sogard to the plate. Masa Yoshida delivers. And Boston now leads it 2-1.
You spend that entire time reflecting really not only just on the season, but we had like an 8 to 9 week period through training camp to our first 4 ball games where you're trying to assess your players, your schemes, and how we best should move forward. So that's essentially all you do.
It'll be the 5th Big Ten opponent that I've gone against, and every game has been one score. In our games, they've all been one score games. Go back to last year when I was here. USC was a one score game. I guess Wisconsin got away from them a little bit. Iowa was a one score game. Michigan was a one score game. You got to go into it thinking every game is going to be a one score game. And every game, and when you're playing games like that, every drive is important. You're going to get about 10 to 12 drives, so you better take advantage of every one of them.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. What's up, Austin?
Oh, surviving and thriving, doing what we can, waking up, feeling good, trying to do what I can. Shane talked me off the ledge this morning, so we're all good.
Well, what happened? Why were we on the ledge?
Shane was my therapist this morning.
That's terrifying.
What do you mean? Shane's a good dude. He's full of knowledge.
He's a good dude. I don't know if I'd go therapy couch on him.
All I did was play drops.
That's actually what he did, yeah. And then he gave me a smile, and he goes, I just want to give you something to laugh about. So thanks, Shane. Appreciate that. It was good.
Yeah. What was the existential crisis about today?
Oh, just getting a text at 8 p.m. last night. Hey, I need you to host a show. And I was like, okay, well, it's gonna be an issue, but we'll make it work. We'll filter through. We'll find out a way. But we got it. We're here. We're good.
You can always say no.
Yeah, but then what are you gonna do?
I'll be like, all right, Rico, you're up, bud.
That's what you did. You had a crash out last night when I didn't respond quick enough for you.
Yep. 100%. Wasn't a crash out. I was just like, well, I guess he's not answering. So
I did like watching the messages, or not watching. I wasn't. That would be evil if I was just like scrolling through and being like, I'm purposely not going to message these. Were you checking like Twitter to make sure I wasn't like tweeting anything stupid? And
no, I was just like, I thought you would maybe. I knew you were. Sometimes you burn the candle at both ends a little bit. I was like, maybe this was his like early to bed night and had to call it a night early, and so I didn't want to,
Nah. We made it work.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I did Shane great job in the open. Those baseball calls. It's October, baby.
I know it is
Feels
officially.
good.
We got the Red Sox going.
See, I would wear my Royal stuff, but
we love the Royals still. It's just
they're out there till April. We'll see. We'll see in April.
They'll come around. So one of these days, they got a nice young core.
They always do the exact same thing every year, though. That
nice young core.
We're actually in the never-ending cycle and circle of life for the Kansas City Royals, where it's like a 25-year cycle, right? Where they will eventually get back to a World Series, but they have a team that always surprises you, and you're like, oh man, like it's once a decade that they're like, this is the team that could make the run. And they're always threatening to make the run, but they face a much superior team that they lose to in a series. Now, the other issue is they're on the downward part of the cycle right now where they should have been competitive this past year, and they should have been playing right now.
They might have missed it.
Yeah.
They might have missed
and
it.
they definitely lost a lot of series that they shouldn't have.
But they still have Bobby Witt Jr.
They do.
They do still have Bobby Witt Jr.
And Cags.
We love Cags.
We do love Cags.
We love Cags.
Notable storm chaser.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. Somebody caught his first hit as a storm chaser on video.
Big video guy.
Yeah.
Big video guy.
That's still one of the funniest parts about this job is like I think I told the story, but people that I work with, including you, Rico, all the content people, are really good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I know how to do almost zero of those things. But I just happened to be, I wanted to go see for my own personal baseball enjoyment. I wanted to go see Jack Caglione when he was here in Omaha for like 15 minutes, basically.
Yeah.
And
then he came back for another 15.
So I was able to get tickets, and it worked out with my schedule. I could go see him, and it was his second home game. So he hadn't had a hit in Omaha yet. And I was like, oh, I'll just take a video and send it to the crew if they can use it, whatever. And the amount of like, little boy, you poo-pooed in the potty, we're so proud of you.
We were.
That from this crappy, grainy video that I sent in that looked like it was from like 1984, like home video, one of the giant like handheld cameras you get for Christmas or whatever, was hilarious. It was a like the way Anna Bellinghausen was just like, oh my gosh, you did it.
We were just so proud of you.
I will say though,
now you're a big TikTok boy though.
I guess I do film those myself, but they're just like selfie videos. I'm not like capturing.
It still counts. It still counts.
It does still count, much like Lonely Island told us. Still counts.
Fair.
But I will say the one Jack Caglione video that I did put out, Anna edited it together and made it not look stupid. That one did some numbers.
Did numbies, as the kids say.
It did some, because he had like an exit velo on a double of like 110 down the line or something stupid. He just smoked that ball.
I still like the Storm Chasers have such an underrated social media account too. That was one of the funniest weeks of the summer, is when they were tweeting out and hyping up the Cags is in Omaha, and then it's him just stepping on first for a routine play, and they were like, "This is the only highlight we have from this first game." Like, and they were like, and I think they said like, "No one does it better." Perfect. That's what I love.
It's like I can step on first base pretty good too. Like, I don't know.
No, it was good. It was good. Geez, oh yeah, I was gonna ask you. A lot of good stuff from Butler and Holgerson yesterday, I thought.
I agree. I was taking notes.
Do you ever get the sense, and I think we ask ourselves this maybe like once or twice during the season. We definitely ask ourselves this too often during the off season, because Rule is so forthcoming and open with a lot of stuff. And as he says, he has nothing to lose, right? He has everything to gain from it. I feel like they're giving us that are paying attention a lot of information.
I would agree. I noticed this first with Butler because we got a little bit more of him earlier last year as a position coach, and so we kind of got to know him a little bit. Dana came in very late, obviously, and so it's hard to know. And I'll be honest, I wasn't like real dialed into his Houston press conferences, and the West Virginia ones have been a minute, right? So I wasn't as familiar when Dana came in, and also the circumstances which he came in were pretty strange.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure what to make of kind of his demeanor last year. With Butler, though, I really do feel like we've seen a big change in just his like comfort level with the media and just the fan base, I think, as well. I think there's something to, I think that Rule sort of asks this of his coaches.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't have any information there. This is just the sense that I get.
I think you are right, though, because Rule understands. I mean, the podcast, his social media appearances, the more that Rule gets out there, he knows that this is my public image I am presenting. And Rule has said it on this show, too, when you call him wildly, in the middle of a walk. But he said it that wherever the N goes, I should be there, right? And if the N is being represented in press conferences by his other, compatriots when it comes to his coordinators, they too should also understand that, like, accounts like Hurrdat Sports and Hail Varsity are going to be posting clips of John Butler out. So if you come across super grumpy or super whatever, like, you can be your personality. That's totally fine. Be who you are. But you also have to have you have to be consistent. You have to kind of stick with that sort of messaging of like, we know we're representing the program every single time we step in front. And notably, I mean, not to compare apples to oranges like we usually do, but that wasn't the case in other coaching regimes in the past because it's like they forgot the cameras were on them at times.
Well, it's also like they forgot who paid them.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest. It's like I'm not trying to be that guy, but you are some of the highest paid employees of the state of Nebraska.
Right.
right? And I get not all that's tax dollars. I get a lot of it's booster money and fundraising and things like that. I get that. But you're a public employee.
Mhm.
You're literally an employee of the public university system of Nebraska, and you are incredibly front-facing, and you are, I mean, you're literally the highest paid employees of the state, right? Coach Rule certainly is. I have a hard time imagining anybody else in the state is making seven figures, which Butler and
Right.
Holgerson both are. I think Butler is. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
If it's not, it's close, right? So I have a hard time believing anybody else in the state is making that kind of money. So I think there is kind of an obligation of you have to give these people a little bit, right? It's also, I do think there's an appreciation there that this job doesn't exist without the people that feed it, whether it's the fans, first and foremost the fans, and then the media that sort of try and feed the fans what they're trying to, or the content that they are desiring to consume. Like, without all that, none of this exists, right? The best facility in the country doesn't exist. The 405 straight sellouts doesn't exist. The whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
All that doesn't exist. And so I think Coach Rule is the first coach in a long time, maybe since maybe ever. He might be the first coach ever in Nebraska history who has understood that is part of it, right? That's not to take anything away from other coaches that have been good, but like Tom Osborne didn't really have to deal with this part of it.
Right. Like there's the media aspect of it too, but
Yes.
he didn't have to get up and was expected to, for better or worse, Matt Rule gets up there and performs twice a week.
Yeah,
he does go straight entertainment when he goes on Mondays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
And then he adds everything else that he does too.
Well, and there's the landscape is way different.
Yes.
Than it was when like Solich was here, right? I do think it started to change like in the Callahan Pelini eras is where it really, by that point you're full into the recruiting website era and things like that. But I just don't, I think when you see the changes, and I think it's particularly noticeable, like I said, with Butler, because we did see him last year. He seemed uncomfortable at times. I do think it's something that he tries to impress upon his coaches. Hey, this is important. This isn't the NFL. You can't just go up there and say, like, there's not some one single multi-billionaire owner who's paying for everything, and the NFL is this unstoppable machine where, like, college football programs do become irrelevant.
Yep.
Right? That's a real thing that happens to actual college football programs. So you really can't afford to alienate the people that keep you from becoming irrelevant, especially when you haven't won at a high level yet.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I do think it seems like he goes out of his way to be like, hey, you have to give these people as much information as won't hurt us.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And they do a great job of that because we have been dancing around this number 2 running back conversation since last week.
And they've been honest. What I like this week is they're honest. They're like, hey, we think we've got it figured out. Yep. I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm cool with.
What more do you want? Like, if you're going to watch a movie, do you want it to be spoiled right in the middle of it? Like, do you want to be told at the end? No, wait till Saturday. Like, we will find out on Saturday.
Listen, I would love if they tell us. I also understand if they've got, like, I think it's going to be a situation where Isaiah Mosey is kind of playing more of a hybrid role and getting some 2-back sets in there. And, like, that's what I think it is. If you're going to introduce somebody new into a game plan in a way that you haven't before, I understand how that is a competitive advantage for Michigan State not to know that.
Right. But it's also a competitive advantage, too, for Nebraska to say, hey, we got to figure it out, Michigan State. Good luck figuring it out.
Right.
Like, we're not going to tell you how it works.
So I don't have a problem. A lot of times I think college football coaches are overly paranoid.
Yeah.
Right. we're not dealing with like nuclear codes or anything here. Like, for the most part, the information that they have to offer is not that sensitive, which is why I appreciate they give us as much as they do in press conferences. But I do understand there's some times where it's like, hey, in this specific instance, like it's not going to be helpful for us to share what our plan is if we've got a special plan for a player on offense or which left tackle we think is going to play or whatever, right? When there's a competitive advantage, I totally understand acknowledging the question, saying, hey, we think we figured it out. You're going to have to wait till Saturday because that's not something I want to share right now.
Yep.
That's an honest and legitimate answer, and I'm cool with it. There's a difference between that and going full Belichick and just being like, we're on to Buffalo.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? Like that's a totally different thing. And you can do that here, but by God, you better win a hell of a lot of games.
Right. Yeah. Well, because then you become like the nuisance of the offseason that like, oh, whatever. And then, usually court of public opinion would sway and everyone would kind of readjust there. But the fact that when you are talking about just the open honesty, being yourself, like being in the press conferences, I thought maybe the best answer that we actually got from John Butler was an answer that means nothing for this week at all, was that I think he's completely comfortable in front of the media because when they asked him directly about, hey, have you seen what Cincinnati's quarterback's been doing since you played him? And he just goes, no. I have not been paying attention. No. Is that easy for anyone to say? Yeah, but did it come across as very genuine because we've heard and seen from him more? Yeah, I actually fully believe that he was like, I have literally never went back and looked at Brendan Swartz.
Yeah, I mean, why would he?
No, there's no reason to.
Right? Although I did think it was funny where he was like, I guess he's pretty good.
But again, he knows because he understands.
Yeah.
That's the other part, too, that I do love about it. And we have gotten the inklings of it, especially from Rule this season, more than really any of the years past in his open media availabilities, is that they're addressing the things that the fan base is talking about, whether online, in the stadium, on these shows, all that sort of stuff. They are talking about that because they are taking in kind of that information, and they're not using it as like a discretion that they're being like, okay, well, we're just not going to talk about this stuff because obviously the fan base wants to learn, whatever. But likely when the fan base has concerns, that's also the concerns of the coaching staff too. But also when the fan base wants to publicly praise and defend the program and say, hey, look, we're actually doing some right stuff, the coaches are actually like noticing that as well. And they do go out of the way to be like, oh yeah, I guess we're pretty good at defending the pass against a really good quarterback, because what have we been talking ourselves into the past 4 weeks since that Arrowhead game? We've been saying Brendan Sorsby might actually be a good quarterback. Look at his stats. Look how he's performing in the Big 12. Look at all these numbers he's putting up. Yeah, I think that they knew what they did against him. But now that they can kind of publicly say, yeah, we probably had a good idea of what we were doing against Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think there's I do think it's a little funny. I mean, it's 975 yards and 10 touchdowns for Brendan Sorsby in 3 games since Nebraska, which surprise. I don't know if you know this. I guess that's pretty good. I guess he's pretty good. I do understand, I understand people, we're talking about the run defense or whatever, and somebody in the chat here, Jeremy says the media is beginning to go after Rural. Husker Online is talking about how they can't run the ball, can't stop the run.
The media.
Things like that. Yeah.
We gotta Shane and Rico are here. We gotta work on like a deep voice, like very scary, like horror movie type guy that just says the media.
Yeah, just so we've got the boogeyman, right?
Yeah, right.
The media. We also
have it pop on screen.
We also, like one of those on
jump scare. Yes, it goes
like one of those on 3 graphics that just like with just the one word across the bottom, where I don't even remember. Some of them are ridiculous. They're like considering. It's like, wait, what?
Or like, I like the ones where it's like a photo of like a quarterback at the combine and it just says small.
Yes,
really?
You're like tiny hands.
I hate that.
But I got these tiny hands. But no, I mean, I don't want to be lumped in with the media.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I get the people are frustrated, but I also defense, this is something DB says all the time. Like you have to give up something.
Yeah.
Right. That's the nature of defense. We heard Butler talk about this, right? Where he's talking about the zone versus the man, and like, hey, yeah, you might get a couple more takeaways with a zone defense, but you're not really going to challenge routes on a consistent basis with without man defense. And he's like, I just don't think you're going to have an elite pass defense without going man to man. And it's like, yes, but that means you're like, there are things you give up in man to man. One of those things that you give up is potentially quarterback run game, right? Defensive backs turn their backs to run with wide receivers. They don't have their eyes in the backfield. Quarterback run game can get away from you a little bit. So you bring in a spy. Okay, well, if you bring in a spy, then you don't have as much help over top for the receivers in your pass game as well, right? So like you're always sacrificing one thing to try and fix another. And maybe that's worth it, right? Maybe the corners, as I suspected against Michigan, maybe the corners are good enough that they don't need as much help. And you can bring somebody to spy, whether it's a Sorsby or an Underwood or a Childs, right? Maybe you can leave those guys on an island a little bit. Maybe you do need to run a little bit of zone because you say, okay, we're going to bring some extra pressure. We're going to sit on these things short, and then I don't think you're going to beat us over the top. So you're not going to have enough time to find the holes in the zone or whatever the case is, right? There's lots of different things, but there's always something you're sacrificing in the in the course of that. And that's not to say that they still don't need to get better. Right. We talked, or Rule talked about this. I think Rule mostly talked about it on Monday, where he goes, hey, at some point we need guys to make those special plays, right? We need them to get off a block and do this. And Butler talked about, hey, we need to find the guys that are going to get down into the run fits the way they're supposed to. And I thought he brought up a really good point with Buford when he talked about, hey, if you look, he's talking about the run from Haynes where he goes for 75. He goes, hey, if you look at the run, Marquise didn't make the tackle, but he's like, we have to have guys getting off blocks.
Yeah.
That was an 8-man front defense where we had every gap fitted, and sooner or later, you've got to be able to get off a block and make a play. Like, that's the truth, right? Could Marquise have been probably 2-3 steps further down the line by the time Haynes got there? Absolutely. And would that have made it much easier to tackle him so he didn't have as much open space to make him miss? 100%. But at some point, you also have guys on the defensive line or linebackers that you go, okay, if they get off a block, then we don't have that situation. I believe it was Shavers on that same play. If Shavers had been able to shed his block, then it's a one running back on 2 defenders instead of a one-on-one with a smaller safety. Like, there's lots of things that go into this, and they're aware of all of them, right? That's all you can really ask at this point as a fan, because as in general, the defense has not really hurt them.
Right. And I think that's another part of it too, though, is that they are responding and answering that, like, what we have been saying for Hail Varsity post games. Like, when we react to these games right after, whenever there have been concerns about how Nebraska has played in their wins against Cincinnati and Akron and Houston Christian, or even a loss to Michigan, we've been able to say almost every single time, hey, these are all correctable mistakes. Like, they're not getting, like, completely outperformed. They're not losing, like, the battle of talent, right? Like, the talent is pretty much getting to equal. Like, maybe it's against Michigan, you could probably say, okay, maybe it's a little bit ahead for the Wolverines, but nothing else. Nebraska was right there. Everything that they're doing is correctable. Sometimes the correcting mistake, I believe, is you just have to get a different person in. But it's not like, hey, only our ones can play, and if they don't perform, we're screwed. Like, they are saying, we have things that we can correct. We had a bye week to correct these things, and now we're going to play Michigan State for a chance to be able to show that we've corrected them.
Well, and I appreciate the fact that they're openly talking about, hey, if these guys, if the guys we have in there right now aren't able to execute what we're asking them to do, we basically have 2 options.
Yeah.
We can get a guy in there that can, and if that also isn't working, we have to run something else that someone on this team can execute at a high level, right? I appreciate that they're like, it's not one of those things where, like, if you couldn't run Bo's defense, you just weren't going to play. Right.
Yep.
Like, if you weren't
we've
able,
heard those horror stories before.
Yeah.
I mean,
like if people would just get shelved and never heard from again, and you'd have guys that would take, it would take highly rated recruits 3-4 years to get on the field because they just couldn't quite get it in Bo's defense. And I remember the questions then, why can't we get these guys on the field? Why can't we get these guys on the field? Like,
nobody can do that.
And people would say, hey, you're telling me that Bo's defense is that much more complicated than like Saban's at Alabama, and Saban gets freshmen on the field all the time. Like, I remember having all these conversations with people. And the fact of the matter was that Bo was so rigid in what he wanted out of a defense that if he didn't trust you to do it, you weren't going to see the field. I think there's a little bit of a compromise here of trying to find the best players to fit the best scheme. I mean, there was I think it was from Rule. I don't know if you still have it, Shane. He said a line on Monday about the wrong player, or the right players in the wrong defense are better than the right or the wrong players in the the wrong players in the right defense is never going to be as good as the right players in the wrong defense, right? So that's where he's talking about a couple weeks ago with there's no magical call. Like, there's no magical defensive call where you're just like, hey, this is going to stop everything. And listen, you may get it right a few times and you line it up perfectly with what the offense is trying to do. But for the most part, it's about putting guys in the best position to make plays and then having the guys that can make those plays.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, I think we are going to see some different personnel. I don't know if it's starters or what, but I think we're going to see way more Dawson Merritt than we have he started to play more, but I think we're going to see a lot of Dawson Merritt moving forward. I think we're going to see some changes in the secondary at the safety spots to some guys that can get downhill a little bit better. We saw, there was a pretty quick hook on Buford in the Michigan game. We saw a lot of Rex Guthrie after that. I think they're going to make some of those changes as well. Like, I think you're going to see them be like, hey, we're going to get the guys in here that we think that can make the plays. And that's all you can really ask for.
Right.
Like I understand the frustration of getting gashed 3 times against Michigan. I do. Like, in real time watching that, you're just like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
But it's the thing I tried to say last week, right? When you take kind of a 30,000-foot view, even me, who was like, I think you just got to make Underwood beat you.
Yep.
Right? I also understand that you had basically one play a quarter that got away from you. So it's really hard to throw everything out and try something new, right? Because it's working 90% of the time.
Can I add a counter argument to this?
Sure.
This just occurred to me and thought of it. And just because we were having the conversation like with Dana and everything, and what was those conversations kind of like with Texas Tech under Mike Leach, and then with Dana when he was at West Virginia and Houston, right? That the offense is always going to outscore you. It's if the defense just makes enough stops to keep the other offense from keeping up with however prolific your offense was, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that's maybe where Nebraska is like leaning towards this season, but is that part of maybe the conversation that Nebraska has in the bye week, that it's like, our offense is very good, but they're not performing like 40 points every single game. Obviously against Michigan, they got to 27, but is there a certain number that the Nebraska offense goes in their meetings on that Monday or Tuesday when they get back from the bye week and they're talking to themselves and saying, if we hit this number every single week, our defense is this good that we just have to pass this number and we will win, whatever games moving forward. And again, it doesn't have to be, we got to score 70 points every single week to win. But if Nebraska's defense forces one turnover and we can get an extra possession, we can win by 14 every single week, right? Like, you can just pace yourselves out. It just made me think about when you guys talked to Schaefer last week, and he had said something that was, out of context, very obvious, when it goes, well, the offense just has to outscore everybody, right, to be able to win. Yeah, you win. You win most of your games by scoring more points than the other team.
Last time I checked, that is the rule.
But it is an interesting thought process, though, because there are different ways to play defense, right? There are different ways that you can scheme it up where you're like, listen, we may not be able to stop every single person or every single, play that's coming our way. Like you said, we're not going to design a perfect defense that stops everybody, but we can design a defense that tries to create more turnovers, that tries to be more aggressive. And maybe we give up like leakier plays and we're giving up more yards, which is concerning for some. But if you're winning the games, it doesn't really matter how you win them if your defense is performing up to a level in which your offense can then take advantage of, right?
Yeah, sorry.
I know that's a convoluted way to put it.
But I understand what you mean for sure. I don't think they think about it that way.
Right.
I do think playing, you hear the term complementary football a lot. I do think that matters, right? Like, if you've got an up-tempo offense and you want to Sorry, the Browns apparently are benching Joe Flacco, and so
what?
The ESPN thought
for who? Oh, Dylan.
Apparently not Raiola, Gabriel. Apparently they thought that was worth, as we were making fun of the big graphics earlier, it was apparently worth a very enormous breaking news, as if that anyway. Sorry. I think you do have to play complementary football. I don't think you think about it like, hey, our defense is 35 points good, so we need to score 36 every game. I think you think about it in the sense of, hey, we want to play this style of offense. What type of defense complements that?
Right. But I mean, even in so if you go back to 2009, it was the opposite way, right? It was, hey, offense, try not to just show up and try to not lose the game for us, right? Because the defense is going to put you in positions to win the game.
Right.
I think it's harder to actually do it the opposite way, where it's like, hey, defense, set up the offense to be successful. Because if you have a bad defense, it's really hard to just be like, can you guys get one turnover, please? Can you cover a fumble, that sort of thing?
Even with that, though, I do think there's things you can do, right? I put it in terms of basketball because that's what I coached, but there's if you want to play a super up-tempo style of offense in basketball, it is to your advantage, even if you give up more, to play a super aggressive, turnover-focused defense, right? You're going to give some things up on the back end, but you're going to gain more possessions, which if you've got a high-powered offense and you're trying to speed the game up, that's what you want to do, right? If you're trying to have a high-powered, fast-paced offense, but then you play a pack line defense where everybody basically goes inside the three-point line and just hey, take as much, you can pass around the perimeter for as long as you want. That's not complementary offense and defense, right? I sort of think the same thing is true to a certain extent with football, right? If you're trying to you're trying to maximize the number of possessions for your offense, maybe it does make sense to play a zone where you might get a couple more turnovers, like Butler was talking about. Maybe it does make sense to blitz a little bit more and try and disrupt the quarterback a little bit more to either create negative plays or turnovers to try and get the ball back for your offense. Like, if you think that's who your offense is, there's adjustments kind of stylistically and aggressively that you can make on defense to account for that. Again, I don't think it's like hey, if we play our very best defense, we're giving up 28 points.
Right, yeah.
I need you to score 29. I don't think it's that sense. I think it's more of what do we want our football team to look like in general? Where is our strength, and how can everything else complement that?
I think your basketball analogy was our Nebraska Creighton preview for the
100%.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you just
nailed it
out right there. Yeah, a high flying, fast paced offense against a defense that just packs the paint and doesn't let you shoot.
I have to go back and get something from
from
Jeremy here, because he goes, it's not just running quarterbacks. We gave up 100 yards to Akron and HCS. Or HCU and FCS.
We gave up 100 yards. Do you hear what you're saying?
Yeah, let me just hold on. First of all,
sir, step back.
They gave up 93 yards to Houston Christian. Would you like to guess how many yards per carry that was?
1.2.
2.7.
Dang, that's close.
2.7 yards per carry. They gave up a total of 160 yards of total offense.
Yeah, that's too much.
100.
What's the standard, Ravi? Come on.
Against Akron.
Take away black shirt.
Everybody's. Lose them all.
Yep.
Against Akron. Would you like to guess how many yards they rushed for? It is over 100. So
what?
Ring the panic bell.
104.
113.
You don't point the finger, you point the thumb.
113. Do you know how many yards per carry they had?
2.2.
3.1.
Dang.
They had a total of 175 yards of total offense.
Woo.
So what are we talking about here, guys? Like, I mean, what are we talking about here?
We're concerned.
Michigan was the first passing offense to gain 100 yards on them, and they had 105.
Yeah. Yeah.
They, come on, man. 3.1 yards per carry is the high there, right? What are we talking about? I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. This is, if you're giving up 60 yards passing, I will take the 90 yards or 100 yards rushing over the course of an entire game when they're running it over 30 times.
Right.
This is what we're talking about here. I don't know what, at least as if there isn't a negative in front of the number, it's a failor. You got it. You nailed it.
None of them literally died. Might as well have lost.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Iowa.
Yeah, and Eric, great point. A lot of second and third strings played a lot of that second half of that contest in both games.
Wonder how that was affected at all. Maybe weird.
Yeah. But it's the media.
Jeremy did say, look at Iowa's defense. Iowa's defense and Iowa's offense are a really good example of complementary football.
Yes. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You brought up 09, right? Their job was to not turn it over 9 times.
Shout out Iowa State.
Which famously they failed at once. Right?
Yeah.
That was the bar. Don't turn it over 9 times.
8 we can handle.
8 they would have been able to handle, in fact. 8's a W.
Have you ever went back and looked at Zach Lee's stats from that championship game?
What was that? That'd have been Texas?
Yeah.
No, I have not. I look at Ndamukong Suh's stats all the time.
Right, that's the thing is we were like, oh man, what a great performance by the defense.
Can I just ballpark it? Can I just vibe check it?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up for you so
all right.
You can get it.
If I had to guess, I would say he was somewhere in the neighborhood of
it's so funny.
9 for 22.
Okay.
For 87 yards.
Okay.
I believe no touchdowns.
No touchdowns.
And I will say 1 interception.
He was 6 of 19 for 39 passing yards and 3 interceptions.
Good Lord.
2.1 yards per attempt. And they almost won the game.
So technically, he did have 3 completions, or he did have 9 completions. Just 3 of them were to the other team.
Yes, correct.
That was close. That's horrifying.
And people forget.
People do forget. Honestly, so if he had just not thrown the 3rd interception, again, much like the 9th turnover,
that's what we're talking about.
Probably could have survived.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, that is something to say. It's tongue in cheek here, but when you do look at it from this year's current roster and current perspective, you're playing with a quarterback that, did throw an interception in the last game, but he has not been turnover issue, right? This entire start of the season.
He's got 1 interception in 4 games.
Right, so
you'll take that.
If you're the defense, you're kind of trusting your offense to be like, they're not really putting us in bad positions like we've been in years past. Like, we're not getting to have to defend short sides of the field. We're giving our offense pretty short fields to play with. Like, we're setting them up for success. Again, all of the hand-wringing and consternation, as DB would say, right? When it came to that first drive and you go for it on fourth and you pin them, back, then you get a short field to then set up.
They played field position.
Yeah,
and
then you have a chance to score again. I get it. People wanted 3 points because the final score had a 3-point deficit. I understand where that comes from. But when they're in the game flow and they're playing the game as it was going on in the moment, they were able to trust that the defense was going to do what they ended up doing. Nebraska's offense just failed to score. That's as simple as it was. And I think Nebraska's defense and coaching staff as a whole would say 9 times out of 10 in that situation, depending on where we are in the game, we're going to take that situation pretty much every time. Like, we're going to set up the offense to go for it on 4th and 1 short. Yeah. And we're also going to take our defense and trust them that the offense will get a short field when they get back on the field. I think that they're going to take those opportunities more often than not because that's who they are as a team. It's not the old days where it's, the offense is going to go for it on 4th and 1 because if they don't, the defense is, never going to see the ball again, that sort of thing. Like, that's just not the case this year.
Yeah, and I think you have to, like, if you're Nebraska and you take away the actual results, right? We're all about process and standard and all that, right? So you take away the actual results and you say, hey, did this play out the way we wanted it to?
Yeah.
The answer is yes, right? It didn't end in the results they wanted to. Obviously, they wanted points. But if you're going to say, hey, we have an opportunity to drive down the field, get an opportunity to score. Okay, you get stopped on 4th down. Obviously not what you want there, but you're in a decision-making process where you're like, okay, if we get stopped on 4th down, we're going for it because we know that we could pin them back deep here. If we pin him back deep here, can we get a stop and flip field position for our offense to get the ball back? That was the goal. That's exactly what happened. You're like, okay, so we've got an opportunity to get points again. They got into field goal range again, and then they missed the field goal, right? So the results didn't go the way you wanted to, but in terms of the process and the thought process behind it, it all was what you want. Now, you have to execute just a little bit better, right? So we're talking about all the time. You have to execute it just a little bit better. If you're the defense, you have to execute things just a little bit better so that Justice Haynes has a 9-yard run instead of a 75-yard run.
Yeah.
You have to execute just a little bit better so Marshall has an 8-yard run instead of a 54-yard run. Like, that's just what it is, right? But if you're talking about the thought process, and that's what I think is encouraging. I know people get sick of me saying this sometimes, but in years past, the process was broken, right? I get the Michigan game is frustrating. I get that maybe we didn't love how it looked against Cincinnati, even though apparently pretty good and the quarterback is really good, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get the frustrations there, but this is not the same thing we've been watching. And I think we're going to see that play out over the next 4 games when you're playing opponents that I don't think are as good as Cincinnati and are definitely not as good as Michigan.
Yep.
Michigan State, Minnesota, Maryland, Northwestern. I switched 2 of those. Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern. All of those teams are teams in which the process playing out the way it did against Michigan will get you wins.
Yep.
It will. And do you still have to strive to execute better? 100%. Is this still the youngest team in the Big Ten? So I believe they're going to continue to get better throughout the season? 100%. That, I think, is a cold, hard fact. I just do. This is, like, I'm not making that up. It's the youngest team in the Big Ten. That's a real thing. Like, does Williams Nwaneri look like the same player from week to week? No, he gets better every single week.
Yep.
Deshaun McCullough, who's 5th year, 6th year, 8th, 10th year, I don't know, he's been in college forever. Seems like he's still getting better.
Yeah.
Every single week. I mean, nobody even wants to throw at Sierra Wright. Not a soul. They're just like, absolutely not. 100% no. If you throw it, if you're a quarterback and you throw it to Sierra Wright, you're going straight to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Like, no throwing to Sierra Wright. Like, that's a huge improvement from last year. Like, there's places where the improvement needs to be more stark. Offensive tackle is a good example of that. Totally understand that. Defensive line, you need some of those guys on the interior, not just Williams Nwaneri, to start stepping up. I need my guy Keona Davis to become a playmaker. Elijah Judy, was he better against Michigan than he was at literally any other point in his career? Yes, he was. Yeah. Riley Van Poppel, has he been better in the last 3 games since he was at Cincinnati? Yes, 100%. Like, I look at this team, I see a team that's continually getting better. I see a team that, even if they were 45 plays away from their standard, they were only 4 or 5 plays away from beating Michigan, right?
Yep.
This is a team that's getting better, and I think that plays out starting this week against Michigan State, but I think we'll see it throughout the month of October. I really do. Let's set up the show real quick here.
Yeah.
Brian Christopherson coming up at 8 o'clock, Husker 24/7. 8:30, we've got Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. At 9, we've got Bill Bender from the Sporting News covering all of college football, all the sports. And then at 9:45, got Graham Couch, columnist for the Lansing State Journal, to talk a little Michigan State football as well. That's what we've got on tap for the show. Also, I've got some questions that I need to ask Austin here. One of them is an NFL question.
Oh, no.
I need to know if it's safe to have a conversation here.
Uh-oh.
I've got a concern.
Okay.
I'd just like to talk about. We can maybe get to that next.
You want to do therapy with Shane?
I don't know. I don't think the drops are going to help.
Okay, that's fair.
Maybe they will.
Maybe.
We'll give it a shot. You never know. He surprises me sometimes.
We'll keep it a buck.
You know, that Crawford one he had the other day got me. You know, so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
We'll keep it a buck. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. It's Hurrdat Sports Live.
So if I look at you and tell you in a polite way, like, I'm going to beat your ass.
Back to busy feels better in the 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo L. Right now, get 0% financing for 60 months. More space, more style, and more savings at Edwards CDJR Council Bluffs. Or get the muscle you need for busy days in the 2025 Ram 1500. Built strong. Now with 0% financing for 72 months during the Drive into Fall sales event. The Back to Busy Drive into Fall sales event. Only at Edwards CDJR Council Bluffs. To Edwards CDJR and Council Bluffs.
You've got a really cool student and educators day on October 1st. It's an unusual midday weekday game so that the kids can come from school, right?
It is, and it's a wonderful piece of that whole community puzzle. So it's something that minor league baseball and Storm Chasers have done for years. We did it for the first time last year. It was a noon game against Spokane, and we're doing it again this year on the 1st, 12 o'clock against Portland, and it's a fun way for students who may or may not have ever had the opportunity to watch a professional soccer game in person to come to Warner Park and spend a couple of hours. They can bring their lunch. It's free to the students. Teachers submit to come out there, and they get to spend a couple of hours. It was a beautiful day last time. It was originally people were skeptical, right? The players were skeptical. The staff was skeptical. Season ticket members were like, I don't know how we feel about this. But after we did it once, and
they loved it.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Aspirations can drive us. Sometimes a simple gesture is what fuels the pursuit of a dream. When it's time to make your dream a reality, we are here to help. Federal Credit Union. We are where you are.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
He's thrown for 975 yards and 10 touchdowns since our game. I didn't know that. Well, he's a pretty good player, I guess. I think somebody mentioned it the other day, and one of the guys mentioned, I think more specifically, the Kansas game. They said he threw for almost 400 in the Kansas game, but good for him. He's obviously made the adjustments he's needed to make, but we've really got to focus on us and figuring out a way to stop the run, stop the explosive runs.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Don't forget, if you're on the roads this morning, make sure you get that seatbelt fastened and make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. It prevents injuries and saves lives, but only if worn properly, like this. Click.
Keep it a buck.
Got to.
Yep.
Hey,
with the NDOT.
Keep it a buck. We ass.
Alex, you're right. He's locking it up.
Locking it up. Not a sword. Famously, not a sword.
Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday on our way to lunch. Thanks for being SMU yesterday, by the way.
You know,
really
love being a Mustang.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Roll Stangs.
Yeah, but this is them putting a sword away, right?
Yes, yeah.
So that means they've slayed their opponent.
Well, you know, there's a couple different things here, right?
Because it's not brandishing a weapon then.
Yeah, you're not drawing the sword.
Yeah.
Right. But then I think we came up with the fact that it's like maybe the violence has been accomplished, so you can put it away.
What if they fenced? Like if they just like
the little on guard?
Yeah, right. Like, is that wrong? Would they get in trouble for that? That's technically brandishing a weapon.
Listen, it's a gentleman's sport. Maybe they'd let them get away with it.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, listen, anything's a weapon if you try hard enough.
They should do polo next, where like they get on the shoulders of someone else and just ride
the horse.
Yeah, it's like the most ridiculous type of celebration you could probably get away with.
I don't know. There's some pretty ridiculous ones.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other ways that like the brandishing a weapon can definitely be like misconstrued. And I think the goal should be to try to force the officials to throw a penalty on you, but they can't explain why.
Yeah.
For your celebration specifically,
yes.
Right? Because
I mean, in basketball, you used to have the 3-point arrow.
Yes, right.
But
you can't do the arrow now. That was a Josh Norman classic. But in the Division II and FCS, you can shoot arrows literally into the player you sacked, and they're like, "That's fine, as long as it's not a firearm. Don't worry about this."
Well, listen, bows and arrows are a little. I don't know, man.
Can you do a crossbow? Can you like load it?
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
We argued the bazooka. The bazooka would be fun.
Bazooka would be a fun one. Could you like throw a spear? Just
the javelin. Yeah. We argued the mortar shell where you and like a teammate are holding it. You just
hit it on the ground. You
go back. The mortar shell would be fun. Like that's a fun like defensive like touchdown one where like you get one guy as the team's running towards you. You like load up the mortar and you fire it off and everybody falls.
So they used to do that they used to have a grenade celebration. You like circle everybody up around. Somebody would throw the grenade. Everybody falls down. Like, is that illegal now too? Is that brandishing a weapon?
Probably.
That's an all-time celebration.
Right. It's great. Yeah.
It's a great one.
They could reenact like a scene from like a cop movie or like a SWAT team like infiltrating where they like bang the door down and they like
go up to the goalpost. You like try and kick it down.
They're like entering the building, scouring through.
Clear. You know, just checking corners and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're just going SEAL Team 6 on that thing.
Yeah, I do want to like. Could you just reenact the entire like Princess Bride like sword fight scene with everybody? You're just like, yeah. You're just like like, running across everything.
If you and your teammate get into a fencing battle, do both of you brandish a weapon in that?
What can you pretend to box?
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, just be like, boom.
Nebraska actually should do that.
They should.
They should get their Bud Crawford game right.
They absolutely should get their Bud Crawford game right.
That would actually be really cool.
Be like a little,
and then do the turnover belt after. I mean, that would be sick. If you get the turnover, you get to box the teammate. You win. You like knock him out, and then you get the belt. That's actually sick. You're welcome, Matt.
Yeah.
Look what we just gave you.
branding. I have it on good authority that Bud Crawford has a Nebraska title belt.
Right.
Like maybe we borrow that bad boy.
There's no way they just made one of those. They for sure made a few.
Yeah, I mean, Rule's probably got one in his office right now, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna see it on the next episode of House Rules.
He's gonna be
wearing I don't think he's gonna wear it. It'd probably be up somewhere. But I'm gonna be honest, if I was Bud Crawford, I'd wear one of those things at all times.
Oh yeah, why wouldn't you? I would just hire someone to walk around holding it up
behind.
Yes. Yeah, like I'm walking through Hy-Vee, I'm just going to grab a couple limes or something like that, and just my dude's behind me, just
yes, just all the time, just hold it up like that. It's like did I tell the Nate Gary story on air?
No, I don't think.
When I ran in, a couple weeks ago when we had Kenny had his Hall of Fame. Oh
yeah, you did the live show down there,
yeah. So did the live show down there, and it was super cool. Got to hang out with a lot of Kenny's friends from the university and then from Colorado and whatever, right? And there's a gentleman that's standing next to me in the stands as we kind of get settled and everything. And so like everybody's kind of introducing themselves to everybody because there's a bunch of groups of people that don't know each other. And he goes, "Hey, I'm Nate." I go, "Oh, hey, I'm Ravi. I work with Kenny." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I see the show. I've seen the show before." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "How do you know Kenny?" And he's like, "Oh, I played with him." and I go, "Oh," and my Rolodex is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, what's your last name?" And he goes, "I'm Nate Gary." And I was just like, "Oh my god."
You're like, holy. Oh
I was
God.
like,
You're like, dude, I know who you are.
I was like, yeah. I was like, and then he came back the next week and did a pregame show with us down at the Omaha Stacks Team Jack tailgate, and he was super cool about it. I made fun of myself, whatever. But my point is, if I was Nate Gary, Super Bowl champion Nate Gary,
right.
I would I'd have that thing like on a necklace around my neck.
I am Nate
you know,
Gary. Yeah.
like I would have the Super Bowl ring, or I'd wear it all the time. Like, how often do you get to wear a Super Bowl ring, man? Just wear that thing.
Yeah, that's true.
All the I'd wear it all the time. That's probably
a good argument.
Also, why I'm not a champion. Because
I would be flaunting that thing.
I would.
You'd never not know that I was a champ.
Like if I'm Tom Brady, I'm wearing every one of those things every time I'm on television. I'm just a reminder.
And like you would just make it so obvious. You'd just be like, "Oh, guys, like
I'd be like, guys, listen up.
Hey, before I dive into this plate of wings, let me just." Sorry, my bad. Yeah, sorry.
And
guys.
then I would put them on a necklace to be like, all right, we gotta do this, and then
always carry like a case with you. And be like, sorry, I always put these in
put
here
them back
when I'm not wearing
like
them.
a little tiny suitcase. But yes, if Super Bowl champion Nate Gary had been wearing his Super Bowl ring, I may have put 2 and 2 together sooner. I figured out what the problem was though, because I was standing up on the bench of the bleachers, and he was standing down below.
Oh,
so he seemed very short to me.
And you were looking down on him?
Yeah, which is he's much taller than I am.
Yeah.
But it seemed I guess I just forgot that because I'm a moron. But like he seemed short, and so I was like, oh, that's not Nate Gary.
Yeah.
It was Nate Gary. And
did you call him for targeting?
No, I didn't. I think I did end up telling him though. I was like, that Josh Allen thing's like one of my favorite things.
It's the best.
One of my favorite things that's ever happened.
And I mean, kudos to Nate Gary. Obviously, great NFL career. Like, he's Super Bowl champ, great college career, all that stuff. The fact that Josh Allen could go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in, like, history of football.
Certainly of the era.
And Nate Gary has this just incredible moment on him.
Yes.
That is Nate Gary's forever. Like, Josh Allen will never win that moment.
Yes.
Like, they'll never be like, from that moment on, Josh Allen became a better quarterback. No, he was, like, kind of the same quarterback the entire time. Like,
well, like, listen, it's fine. Like, Josh Allen can have everything else over him.
Yeah.
Although Nate Gary still has Super Bowls over Josh Allen.
That is true. People forget.
2-0, Nate Gary. We got handing the football back to a quarter. Listen,
I need Kyle Byers to make the documentary of like why Nate Gary is better than Josh Allen.
I love it. I'm just saying that's one of the most diabolical things you can do is hand a quarterback the ball after you've intercepted them.
Well, and then
like, here you go, buddy. You lost this.
He handed it back,
and then Josh
Allen threw it at him, and Josh got the penalty. Like, it's the perfect. Like, you got the turnover and an extra 15 yards.
It's one of my favorite sequences in like recent Nebraska football history. It is
perfect,
hilarious.
Yeah, and the best part too is that the main camera stayed on it the entire time.
Yes,
we didn't have to go back and get it. It just stayed right there, and everyone saw it and they went, "Oh, got it."
Got him. Coming up next.
Did we get to what you wanted to talk about?
Not even a little bit. That's okay. Surprise.
We'll get to it in an hour. We'll get there.
Probably not. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. It's Hurrdat Sports Live. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill will be hosting the Blue Jay preview with Anna Bellinghausen. There'll be players from the men's and women's basketball teams from Creighton right here at 6:30. Go to our webpage and RSVP at Hurrdat Sports and Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill to get here. And it's a free event. Just reserve your spot to make sure you've got one. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Live with Brian Christopherson.
Back to busy means Chevy savings this September at Edwards GMC. Lease the 2025 Chevrolet Silverado LT Crew Cab 4x4 starting at just $579 a month with $0 down. Power, style, and big savings at Edwards. Or step into the 2026 Chevrolet Equinox LT all-wheel drive, lease starting at $359 a month with just $1,000 due at second. It pays to make the drive to Edwards Chevrolet Buick GMC Cadillac.
Yeah, I think, this season, every match is so important to kind of that final season. We're not approaching that as far as a coaching staff or a team. If you want the outright, you have to win this game. I think it's very likely that teams are going to lose matches that they haven't lost before, possibly. I think our league is playing really well. I think there's going into last weekend, I had to look back. There's, I think, 4 teams in the top 50 for RPI from the Big East. And so I think everyone's going to be tested every single weekend. I think the middle and bottom of our league continue to get better, which is so exciting for us and also makes for more challenging weekends. And so yes, I think this match is really important for who we want to be and where we want to get to. I think it has the potential to be a top 25, top 30 win when the season's over with how good I think Marquette is and the wins that I think they'll get. But I don't want our team to think that far ahead, if we win this game or we lose this game, that we've won the Big East or the best we're going to do is share the Big East. I think we have to approach every match one at a time.
A successful financial future is built one coin at a time. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned saver, we've got the financial resources and team of experts who will be with you every step of the way. Centris Federal Credit Union. We are where you are.
Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Yeah, good team, big, physical. They look like a Big Ten football team to me. and so they're big, they're physical, they do a lot of man stuff in the red zone. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to work on. Tomorrow's a big red zone day for us, and can't wait to get out there and practice it.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on, buddy?
How you guys doing?
Good, BC. How are you?
I'm swell. Woke up, did my 500 push-ups, a few laps around the block. I'm good.
Doing man stuff this morning?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff.
Wait.
Made sure the stain on my deck had dried from my work yesterday. All that stuff, yeah.
Oh, you're really wrapping up the bye week activity as well. You're like right in the thick of it now.
Yeah. All that was lies. But
I was going to say,
I am on my second cup of coffee, though, so I got a little something going for me.
I was like, BC, 500 is so many push-ups.
That is a lot of push-ups. I would love,
25.
BC with the sleeper build. He just walks into 26 spring practices and just goes, whoa.
Yeah.
BC.
Takes off the pump cover and is just like,
yeah.
What's up, guys?
You're just crushing protein shakes right next to Bruns.
Maybe this
hey,
is
Michael,
gonna.
why don't you go on the field today?
Yeah, this is gonna be the winner of BC. I'm gonna try to do that for by next spring football to bring to reality what you're talking about. There,
love that.
Just like I don't even recognize that guy.
I don't even recognize what
that
we're
would
doing.
actually that would be so funny if you showed up just ripped constantly. You're always having excuses like, oh, I just got to take my shirt off really quick. Sorry, Schaefer. Doing this Husker 24/7 pod. I'll be right back.
You do
I don't even recognize what we're doing.
You do like the Mac from It's Always Sunny, where he just gets jacked for absolutely no reason. BC's just running around yelling, "Tarps off!" all the time.
Yep.
All the time.
Shirts versus skins. Next spring game, Matt. You want to play that? Oh, media skins. All right, I'm good.
Media's over there. Media's going over that way. I don't know what we're doing, Brian.
Well, that's all right. Yeah, I've never been the guy who was begging to be on the skins team. Like I was always like, no, well, we'll be the shirt squad. That's fine.
BC, as we're coming off the bye week here, and we've heard from Coach Rule and then coordinators as well, obviously. Have you feel like you learned anything? You feel like you have any greater insight into how the bye week went than you did 3-4 days ago?
I can't say I've learned a ton. That's nobody's fault. I think we're in one of those holding pattern points the last few days where I think you could tell even on Monday, Matt Rule, as good as he is to us in those settings, I thought it was more like, let's move it along, to the game. There was just a little bit more of that. I mean, obviously we've picked up on the fact that last Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't know that this is unusual to what other operations would do, especially when you have 2 bye weeks, but I do like the fact that they went heavy with some 1v1s and it sounded like about an hour, 15 minutes, of work with that. And I think there was a key point that was being stressed is also sometimes you put all this pressure on yourself. Let's go have fun. Let's go make plays. This game is fun and let's have that attitude. It sounded like they got the right kind of leadership that you would want. I think Dylan Raiola has really stepped up in that regard, pushing the idea like there are no excuses. Nobody's going to feel sorry for us. This is on us to fix what we can fix, and we can do it. I think they like their culture. They have all off season. We've talked about it, and they saw it showing up last week in their eyes, and now we see if that carries forward into an October that, I said last week on this show, whatever happened in Nebraska, Michigan, whether it was a 3-point win or a 3-point loss, ever since this 25 schedule came out, October was that month where it's like, that's where Nebraska especially has to be like standing just one rung higher on the ladder than all these teams. And solidify your space in the upper middle of this league at least, and then go from there. And it starts this week. Obviously, you got to get the first one before you can start talking about getting 4 of them.
BC, have you been surprised in some of these press conferences over the past week and a half, and especially from what we heard yesterday and Monday, just about more of the open honesty about not giving away the entire cow, right? Like we don't know exactly who running back 2 is or any of the, ideology when it comes to the defensive game plans, but it feels like we are getting as much information as possible without knowing the direct answers from the coaching staff. Have you been a little bit surprised at just how open they have been leading into Michigan State?
I don't know if I've been surprised. I mean, I think Rhule's probably more transparent than most coaches, any coaches I've covered. I mean, Mike Riley would very much like lay out his injury situation on the Thursday before a game. That was the one thing he would give everything on. But aside from that, I can't think of a coach that brings you more inside sort of what they're thinking and somewhat what direction they're going than Rhule does. And I think he understands, how connected the connective tissue between this fan base and the program. And so he tries to honor that as much as possible without giving away stuff they obviously wouldn't want to. And I think that's important. I think that's something, if you have a guy in that seat for Nebraska that understands that, the fans do appreciate it. But yeah, they gave enough, but not, I mean, they didn't tell us who necessarily is the number 2 or how that's specifically going to look. So there's some secrets, and exactly who goes out at left and right tackle, that's still waiting for Saturday. So I think they kept behind the curtain what they wanted to. But, I do appreciate, like, if you ask John Butler about, like, the development, I just use it as an example, because Gabe Moore is a really interesting, like, individual story to me, because he was in a green jersey for, like, spring and all fall camp. And then, like, 5 days before the game, you start to hear, oh, he's going to play. And he matters on the run defense. Now, he's not playing 40 snaps, but he's a guy like Gabe Moore has got to be good in October. He can play a good 12 to 15 snaps. And you asked John Butler about Gabe Moore, and he gave a good answer. And I always appreciate that, of course, as a media, and I know the fan base does too.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7 here. BC, we were talking earlier just kind of about the information that we get from John Butler in particular. Do you feel like the I guess attitude and personality of Coach Rhule has rubbed off on the coordinators, but especially Butler, from last year to this year? It seems like he's much more comfortable sort of sharing information, and he seems last year it felt like a very NFL coach who was just kind of like, hey, just got to get out of this, got to get through this. He seems a lot more forthcoming, like Rhule is, maybe not to the same degree, right? But he seems like there's a lot more Rhule in his press conferences than there was last year.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, I think there's an understanding with every coach that comes in here. You got to get used to it the first year or so, exactly how it operates, how information is processed, and how the fan base and media takes it in and all that stuff. And you're kind of studying it, right? I'm sure the first season you're here about what to say, what not to say. And also, I do think it changes probably a little bit if you're a position coach and maybe, you're under the direction of a coordinator, and it's sort of his defense, and that you want to be respectful in certain ways and not step over a line. But then when you are the coordinator, it's you sort of set the standard in what you want to say publicly and what you want your players to hear. And so maybe that's changed some of it too. But I do think that's something that's really beneficial and good in Rhule's operation, is that really all his coaches, like, he puts all those assistant coaches up front at one point during the off season, and they all do like the radio show within the season. And I think that's part of training for them to move up the ladder, right, and be coaches that have higher profile jobs down the road. And I think he takes a lot of pride in having that tree of guys who have success, and part of building that is those guys getting in front of the media, and you have to answer questions after a good week or a bad week, and how do you do that? And so I think there's a lot of that goes into it, where coaches are, they're training not just for the position they're in, but maybe for something bigger down the road for them if they elevate in their profession.
BC, obviously, you had the bye week, kind of recoup, reconnect, and look over a lot of the stats, analyze, maybe watch back some film, whatever you wanted to do on the first 4 games for Nebraska's season. But coming off a loss, I know it's a little bit harder to do for a team to look at the positives, but did you have a chance, or have you thought about maybe an underrated or a player that is maybe being undervalued by a general fan base or from media that isn't getting kind of the attention for what they are doing on the field and just not getting maybe they don't have the stats, maybe they don't have like another the highlight or limelight that's coming their way? Is there someone that's kind of making significant marks without the publicity?
I don't know that he has played a game where you'd say like, okay, he's there yet, but a guy that I think quietly is moving up is Dasan McCullough. Obviously, he was a high-profile guy, as a portal pickup, and he had the missed tackle, I know, on the fourth quarter. He really wishes he had that one back against Michigan. But I feel like if you watch back that game, you saw some of the impact plays he could make. He had 2 TFLs behind the line of scrimmage. And so to your question, when Nebraska loses a game, like if they had pulled that thing out, that's a different story where we're kind of writing about us, how that goes. Like a certain guy makes a few plays like that, and suddenly there's like 2 or 3 headlines about him the next few days. Well, those don't happen when you lose sometimes. And I just feel like he's getting closer to being that sort of full impact guy that Nebraska, was hoping for out of the portal as he's getting used to his jack position. So I'm really interested, like where he goes now after this bye week, because I think there's a lot of promise there with that. When you look at the numbers, like Vincent Shavers is in no way underappreciated by this fan base. They, I think, really love him, but he makes some plays sometimes that people, I think, overlook as like how much he saved the day. He's done it like 2 or 3 times this year. One such play was in the third quarter of that game. Early on, they ran the screen to Justice Haynes, and it was going to go a long ways. And Vincent Shavers is that one of the players on this roster who can erase that, and he did, and it's a no gain, and so everybody forgets about it. But I think there's stuff like that you're going to see show up more from him. And then if you're looking for like a quiet, like he didn't play a lot against Michigan, but I'm really curious when you're talking about young guys who could see the field now, it's Dawson Merritt. He only played like 3 or 4 snaps against Michigan, but I do wonder if with a full bye week, if there's more of a role for him going forward, because if you think about it, he was out in the spring, came back in fall camp, looked like $1 million for a guy who'd been rehabbing all that time. And every week he just got better in August. So you give him another week in late September behind the scenes, who knows? Maybe that's a guy who fits more into the plan.
Yeah, I'm glad you said Dawson Merritt there, because that's a guy I've been keeping an eye on as well. I don't know that they've been in love with the as you mentioned, Shavers, but I don't think they've been in love with all the linebacking play they've been getting from like Javen Wright and Marcus Watson-Trent specifically. I do think we might see a lot more of Dawson Merritt, because whenever he has played, I've been super impressed. And you mentioned Shavers as a guy. I think Merritt's one of those guys athletically that can make plays. One guy that, again, I don't know that he's going under the radar, but I don't know because he doesn't have, 5 sacks in the first 4 games or whatever. But there were several times against Michigan where Williams Nwaneri would run down Bryce Underwood to keep him scrambling, or he'd cut off his angle, or whatever the case was. Like, if you're paying attention, Williams Nwaneri is slowly starting to become more and more impactful, like from a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, and I thought he was super dominant against Cincinnati, but didn't get as much credit as what he probably deserved because of all the rush lane conversation and everything that kind of happened after that, too.
Yeah, John Butler was asked, like, this is like mid to late August, about, is Williams Nwaneri going to play? That's what he was asked. Like, that. I mean, that's sort of where people weren't sure. And just kind of, sometimes you got to step back and think about what maybe the conversation was 2 months ago. Certainly in the spring, it was all about, well, maybe he's a niche role guy. He had that year last year where he only played 38 snaps at Missouri. He kind of builds up this year, and then next year he takes off. He's played 125 snaps. He's played more reps than anybody on the D line. He played 38 snaps against Cincinnati, 44 against Michigan. I know this because I just wrote the story about him. I mean, that's
and he's been good.
Yeah, he has. He's been solid, and I think he's holding up better against the run than some might have anticipated going in. He's definitely an exciting guy who you like. Man, I really like how he changed his game even from late August to late September. What's that look by late October? So that's definitely a good name to mention.
BC, we talked a little bit earlier too about some Nebraska's defense coming off of the loss against Michigan, and the concerns of the fan base, and what the team is doing differently. And we kind of had the conversation about what complementary football looks for this team now that you have an idea of what they look like after 4 games. Is there something that you've heard or have taken from the past kind of couple weeks of conversations from what Rule and what Butler have said specifically that maybe leans one way, that we could see like different defensive adjustments that complements the offense and just trying to get the ball back more or something along those lines? Or do you think it's still kind of the preseason expectations where, hey, we're just going to play to the best of our abilities on both sides?
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard enough to know if you're going to tweak to a certain philosophy of like how they play within a game to what you're talking about. I do think, maybe they'll have to at times put more people in the box and really work hard to take away those explosive runs in any way they can. But I mean, the 75-yard run, as John Butler mentioned yesterday, that Michigan had, that was there were 8 people up front. They had 8 in the box. And they still got burned on it, and everybody got blocked. So I think more than anything, especially on the defensive side, it's very simple talk and harder to do, but it's like what he said, it's like getting off blocks and run defense is an attitude, like when you're a pass defense, when you're talking pass defense, maybe you're talking more scheme and grease board kind of stuff and all that. But you've got to have that attitude and more hats to the ball. And that's been kind of a constant all through, even before the loss. Like there was one of the games where they, it was like Akron or something after the big win. And even Deshaun McCullers said something like, we got to get more hats to the ball. Like I remember him saying that line, and it's so that's got to be something, but I don't think they're going to change like their approach. Like I know the sequence early on against Michigan has been well discussed, where they decided to forego the field goal and go for it, and it didn't work out. I like Ravi. I was listening to you guys the first hour, and I like the point you made. They still got what they wanted out of that scenario. And and that's the thing. Like I wrote it during the game. I was like, if they make the kick, the 40-yarder after they get the ball back after the punt, it's sort of like they did get their 3 points eventually. That's all connected. Some people don't see it that way. I do. And I think that's got to be your philosophy when you make decisions like that. So I actually hope they don't bend too much from that because you had one that didn't go your way, because I think you still got to play with the foot to the pedal a little bit. And in those scenarios, trust, hey, we're going to count on you defense. We're going to put this on your back. If they don't get this 4th and 1 at the 5-yard line, you're going to get us the ball back at the 40 in 3 plays, So I'm fine if they proceed in that manner.
BC, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. I know last weekend there were a ton of high-profile recruits at the Michigan game. I know there's going to be a bunch of, I believe, 20 or 30 guys at the Michigan State game as well. Is there anybody specifically you're keeping an eye on from the last couple of visit weekends? Is there anybody that you think we should be keeping our eye on over the next couple of weeks?
Well, I don't know who's going to pop or not, but I'm looking at our list now to refresh my brain, because Schaefer kind of handled it. The Cooper Terwilliger kid is a really interesting top 247 guy that I don't think people have talked as much about, a tight end. He's an interesting guy in the 27 class. This is a 28 guy who's visiting this week, but Casey Barner was here for the Huddle event in June. That guy, to me, is as good as anybody in that recruiting class. And I don't know, I cover a lot of the team stuff, so I don't always claim to know every guy as well as some others. I just don't. But Casey Barner, I had a chance to sit down and talk with him, and that kid's impressive. He's got a connection with Addison Williams that is real, that goes back. And he's one of the best kids in the 28 class. Like, people should go watch his tape. He can do everything. He's just a playmaker, defensive, but he can do everything. So when I saw that, he's visiting this weekend, I was like, I love that kid. And I just like his attitude. I love that he has a connection with Addison Williams, which I think gives Nebraska a real fighting shot. So that's one name. That one's down the road, 28, but keep an eye on that one.
BC, that you just kind of brought something in my mind with that, because obviously the Michigan game was such a big, it was an event, right? It was what everybody had circled. It was a Colorado game the year before. It was Michigan this year, right? You knew the crowd was going to be up for it. That was a big recruiting weekend. They had a lot of high-profile guys on campus. What is kind of the balance of this coaching staff that you've seen in their recruitment tactics of, do they try to get a lot of their high-profile guys together on the same weekend for a big game like that? Is it just kind of how it balances out on certain schedules? Do they try to like force it all into one? Obviously, you're going to have more guys coming for the rest of the home games and such, but is it something like this Michigan State game? Do you just try to find, okay, we've got one high-profile guy, we're going to really focus on him, and the other guys are here too? How do they balance that? Is there a strategy in that, or is it really just come down to whenever the kids are available and their schedule works out to come?
I mean, sometimes the first part probably is that you're just at the mercy of the kid's schedule. Like what the high school schedule is like. Can he get out that weekend? What does he also set up elsewhere? But certainly I think there's planning or thought to like the more of these guys that we can get around each other that are top guys. I mean, they see who's who and know who's on the top list and all that stuff. And then you're down on the sideline with them, and maybe they've been with those guys at other schools on other visits. But I do think it's a big deal when you get guys around each other who are top tier guys on the setting, on campus in that stadium. And they're like, okay, this is what it would be like. This is what we could do together. That's why I thought it was such a huge thing when I don't know that they're going to get Ahmad Hudson when it's all said and done. But the fact that he was at that 7-on-7 event when Trey Taylor's like in his own future stadium, throwing him touchdown passes in that very end zone. It's like, this could be us, bro. I mean, I think that stuff means a lot. So this is a good weekend. Michigan was definitely a great recruiting weekend, and USC is going to be just huge. It's going to be bonkers for that one. So the thing I'll say though, is they've constantly had a drumbeat, I feel like, this year of having some really interesting prospects like every week. And I think that's been upgraded from the past. I do think they're starting to find their stride, now in year 3 with their relationships and all that and the facilities built, and that's helping them.
All right, BC, I have 2 stupid questions for you before we let you go. Not really Nebraska related at all. Number 1, we were talking about celebrations, like touchdown celebrations.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a favorite touchdown celebration of all time? Because we were doing like the seatbelt thing that defensive backs do now, and we were trying to figure out where the line is on what type of weapon can or cannot be brandished. Like if you did a slingshot, would you get in trouble? I don't know. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite touchdown? Or, I mean, it could be, we were also talking about the Nate Gary, like handing the ball back to Josh Allen as one of our favorites. Like, do you have a favorite celebration that you've got?
Oh, I can't think of what was the back's name from Ezekiel Elliott when he jumped in the
the pot on Thanksgiving. Yeah.
I mean, stuff like that kind of comes to mind. I think who was the first one? Was it Joe Horn or whoever signed the football with the Sharpie for the first time? I mean, at the moment that was sort of innovative, and everybody's like,
Joe Horn was cell phone, right?
So Joe Horn did a bunch of them. He was low key real extra, and I loved it. I know Terrell Owens gets all the run, but like Joe Horn was an innovator.
Yeah, he was. You wouldn't be surprised that a boring answer comes from sort of a boring guy, but I love the simplicity of a defense. I love it when everybody on a defense on a third down stop just holds up the fist. Like we got the stop. And I especially love it when they actually didn't get the stop. They think they did, but like 6 or 7 guys still hold it up, and they're like, the offense got it by like half a yard still. So that, I don't know why, but I always just think that's like such a defensive badass move when they do that. And occasionally it backfires. That's not much of a celebration. My Vikings are great at planning out celebrations when they, intercept the pass and all that stuff. But right now I'd like us to just cut back on that and worry about some of the fundamentals and winning some ball games.
You've got 2 of the more famous ones with the Vikings. You obviously have the Randy Moss mooning incident, which is, as Joe Buck said, a disgusting behavior. But
they had that coming.
You also have, I think, one of the coolest things I've ever seen, where Stephon Diggs just throws the helmet That's an iconic one. That's one of my all-time favorites. When he does the walk-off.
And they still had to flag him for it.
And just chucks the helmet.
Yeah, that was obviously I was just beside myself after that play to beat the Saints in the playoffs. But you're right, the Randy mooning would have to be right up there. I almost bought a T-shirt once that had that. That I think that's connected to the Packer fans do that in the parking lot to the team bus. So that's why he did it. And so I'm sure Joe Buck's made up with them because Randy's become like a TV personality and everybody I think loves him now. But yeah, that was like such an overreaction even in the year 2004, but
it's like he didn't actually show his ass, Joe.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Like I literally remember watching that live and I was like, wait, did he actually pull his pants down and I didn't see it? Like what happened here? Like what's going? It's like, nope, it was just weird.
The funniest part, that Vikings team was 8-8. That was a playoff game. They got in at 8-8 and the Packers had swept them in the regular season and they got revenge there. It was a Mike Tice coach team, I'm pretty sure.
Mike Tice, famously good at his draft picks too.
We love Mike Tice. Second stupid question here, DB, or not DB, BC. Sorry,
we're missing DB.
I know
you're missing him so much.
The second stupid question here with baseball playoffs underway. I know you're a big baseball guy. Is Shohei Ohtani the best baseball player you've ever seen?
Yeah. That's another one where you got to step back. So maybe you don't have to step back. I do, but it's like this is really happening in front of our eyes. You know, sometimes you got to say that this guy is a freak on the mound and can just crush baseballs like that. And I don't know that I've ever seen a better show. Certainly, both pitching and hitting than he right now. So I don't have a problem with anyone who says that or at least entertains that conversation. They should at least be entertaining the conversation. If they're not, they're way off.
He's like the kid in Little League that grew a mustache before everyone else.
Yeah.
Except for he's an adult and these are all the best baseball.
You want to see the birth certificate. You're like, I don't think
he also has an arm tattoo and you're like, who approved that?
Yeah, you're like, was that on Dad's weekend? He signed off on that? Like what?
Yeah.
Except for you're like, oh, it doesn't matter what his birth certificate is because these are all professionals and he's treating them like children. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he is. So yeah, I enjoyed the baseball yesterday. It's better when your team's in it, obviously, but there is a certain delight when you're not worried at all about what happens and you can just sort of it plays in the background. So that was me.
That was me this past weekend with college football where Nebraska wasn't playing. You should be like, hey, there's a million good games on. Let's just soak it in.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And the good thing that weekend, it was one of those where sometimes there's bye weekends with Nebraska football where the games go a certain way and people are still down in the dumps or whatever. I think it was one of those weekends where some teams lost, Florida State lost. And I just felt like it started the weekend around here with that thought, a lot of teams have been dinged now. Everybody except Maryland has a loss on Nebraska's schedule. That's sort of college football as it is now. And I do think in a weird way, it kind of helped people get past Michigan. All right, let's see what October brings.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, BC.
Coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Live, we will talk to Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. But before we do that, I got to remind you, you got to go talk to our friends at Big Brothers, Big Sisters of the Midlands. They're looking for 60 men in 60 days to become mentors because currently 70% of their youth on their wait list are boys just waiting for a male mentor to connect with. Just takes 4 hours a month to make a big difference, whether it's shooting hoops, grabbing something to eat, or just hanging out. Little moments can make the biggest difference. Don't have to be perfect. It's just about showing up. And BBBS supports you every step of the way. Go to bbbsmidlands.org to sign up to be a mentor today. Kevin Sjuts coming up next.
This September at Edwards Hyundai, lease the 2025 Hyundai Tucson SE all-wheel drive, starting at just $249 a month. Style, tech, and value that makes getting back to busy easier. Or upgrade to luxury SUV comfort with the 2025 Hyundai Santa Fe Calligraphy. Take $7,000 off MSRP on every remaining model in stock. Big savings, but only while they last. Back to busy means more Hyundai savings this September at Edwards. It pays to make the drive to Edwards Hyundai in Council Bluffs.
I mean, I think Dylan's playing at a very, very, very high level, right? And so how I call plays, I call what's working. Okay, so I don't go into a game saying, man, we need to throw for 350 yards. I mean, it's all about how the flow of the game is. Okay, with that said, our running back, our running game, it needs to improve against an opponent like that, right? And so, I was happy with where the run was after the first few games, but then you play a top 20 team that's, a perennial top 20 team, and it didn't look the way it needs to look. We weren't finishing blocks, and that's not a shot at our O-line. That's a shot at our offense, because there's so many people that are involved in it, right? First play of the game, Emmett gets 14 yards, and that's the longest run that we had all day, and so we gotta do a better job of scheming things up. We gotta do a better job of sustaining blocks. That's everybody on offense, I mean, and then we gotta run harder, and I know a lot's been said about who number 2 is and all that stuff. I mean, we have options, and it's our job to get them there. And when we put them in there, it needs to look better.
Imagine your first dream home and the feeling of walking inside for the first time. With Centrist Federal Credit Union's First-Time Home Buyers Program, you are at the doorstep of bringing your vision to life. Welcome home. From your neighborhood mortgage experts, Centrist Federal Credit Union. We are where you are.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live. That's awesome. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, what's going on, buddy?
Good morning. Hope you guys had a nice bye week.
Yeah, how was your bye?
I enjoyed it. It was really good. College football is a lot of fun. Sometimes when Nebraska plays, I don't get to see as much as the common fan until, I don't know, midnight, 1 a.m. But being able to just kind of follow along with some of those great overtime games. And, Oregon, the Oregon-Penn State game was awesome. And being able to just kind of enjoy that from the comfort of my home was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say that was probably the best part about Saturday, that the day continued to ramp up as it went on. Like, the games just got better and better because LSU Ole Miss was pretty good. You had Indiana, Iowa. And then when you hit Saturday night, you were like very primed and ready to be able to get great football.
Full tilt.
I mean, couldn't have asked for a better Saturday slate.
Yeah, you left out Tennessee, Mississippi State. That was an overtime.
Great one.
That
Yeah,
was really
great
exciting. One. And what was crazy was, like, for whatever reason, my network of friends and family members, I knew people that were at Indiana, Iowa. I knew somebody that was at the Missouri game. I knew somebody that was at the Texas A&M game. So, like, it was cool just being able to kind of follow along through other people that were at games, and I was at none, and I was vicariously living through a bunch of people.
Kevin, let me ask you this: Did watching the games last Saturday make you? Did it change how you felt about Nebraska at all? Just seeing, because I know a lot of times with what we do, especially, you don't always get to consume a ton of other college football on a game day like that. Did getting to see all of that, all the big matchups, you know, a couple of Big Ten ones, whether it's Penn State, Oregon, or Illinois, USC, whatever, Indiana, Iowa, did it make you feel better or worse about the situation Nebraska finds itself in?
Great question. I don't know. I think that this isn't going to quite answer your question, Ravi, which is a good one, and you really got my wheel spinning here. I think in previous years, I would watch on the bye week and think Nebraska's pretty far off. I think I watched this past weekend, and think about where Nebraska's at in terms of the 4 games we've seen so far, and I don't feel like they are as far off as in previous years. Maybe that's the play of Dylan Raiola so far in the offense, finding ways to put the ball in the end zone. I think I would be, if anything, I'm maybe a little bit more encouraged about where Nebraska's at on a national perspective than I have been in previous years during Nebraska's bye week.
Okay, so Kevin, that kind of leads me to my question then about how did you feel leaving Memorial Stadium that Saturday against Michigan? Obviously a disappointing result for Nebraska. There was I felt like a lot of visceral concern there, but I think the general fan base has really weaned off of like what happened, and maybe it was through the next week of college football, taking some time away from it. Everyone, had a chance to look at the rest of the slate. Do you get the sense that maybe like the fan base has like calmed down, the program's like kind of back to even after that loss?
Yeah, those are two completely different feelings, Austin, from what everybody was feeling on the Sunday after the Michigan loss to October 1st. I think everybody is calmed down, and I think everybody can start to reason with, at the end of it, it's a loss, and Nebraska's 3-1. And I think in the moment, everybody was so worked up and trying to like have a knee-jerk reaction about like, well, the season's not going to be what we were hoping the season would be. And then once you have time to decompress the game and collect your thoughts, you realize that folks that predicted Nebraska to go 10-2 or 9-3, Michigan might have been one of those losses anyway to begin with. So it doesn't really change your overall perspective of the season and what this team might still do. And I think everybody's in agreement now, too, that instead of having some angst about the Michigan loss, there's maybe more ramped up excitement and anticipation for the month of October. These games coming up over the next few weeks, they are not sexy, but they are hugely important to what Nebraska's season is going to look like in terms of the record at the end of 2025.
Yeah, it's we were talking about this earlier, and this next month, right? You mentioned none of these are sexy wins, right? These are wins that you don't get a lot of credit for, but you get hammered if you lose. But those are the games that Nebraska has struggled with the most, it seems like, right, Kevin? Like, I don't think most people go out and they don't think about last year as a disappointment because they lost to Ohio State. They think of it as a disappointment because of, the loss to Iowa or obviously Indiana was a whole other thing last year, or the loss to Illinois, right? And I think that's pretty common over the last, until at least you get back to Bo, when the whole thing was like, oh, they can't win any big games. So for at least the last 10 years, these are the games that have kind of like, if we left this season, Kevin, and I know that most people were somewhere in the 8-4 to 9-3 range in predictions, and you said, hey, Nebraska lost to Michigan, USC, and Penn State this year. They went 9-3. Those are the 3 losses. I think most people would be more than okay with that, right?
Considering Nebraska won 6 games in the regular season last year, absolutely. That's like, because you just referenced Bo Pelini, Ravi, and I feel like that's Nebraska's next step as a program, is getting to a Bo Pelini-esque season.
Agreed.
And that's not taking down the giant on the schedule. That's just avoiding the bad losses and beating the teams that Nebraska should beat. And frankly, I would expect the Huskers to be favored in every game in the month of October.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this is such a critical stretch ahead, because if you want to have that 8 or 9 win season, you have to beat a Michigan State, a Maryland, a Minnesota, and Northwestern. Doable? Yes. But has it happened every year since, 2013? No. So I think that, that's really what is going to be the ultimate gauge of this season, is what happens in October. And that also sets the table for what November looks like. If Nebraska somehow goes 2-2 in this month, now November looks and feels completely different. If Nebraska goes 4-0, you've got momentum. You're 7-1 going into November, and a couple of big-time games in that month. It feels different. There's excitement, and you probably have a better chance of stealing one of those games that you maybe aren't favored in.
Kevin, is that where you start to feel kind of the sense of, you haven't had the marquee win, you haven't had the marquee season like what we had hoped to see in the first 2 seasons under Rule, but is this where you start to kind of convince yourself that, yeah, the program has turned the corner, because you can convince yourself of some of these other things, even if the results aren't happening yet, or maybe are about to happen when we go through October into November?
I think everybody answers the statement, turn the corner, differently. Some people turn the corner. You only do that with beating a Michigan and getting rid of that, ranked team losing streak, or going to Happy Valley and being competitive with Penn State. Some people would consider turning the corner, just going undefeated in the month of October. That's the camp that I exist in. It's just, because honestly, if Nebraska wins 9 games in the regular season, maybe 10, you're playing on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
And I would qualify turning the corner as playing on New Year's Day. And, I mentioned a scenario in which the Huskers would possibly be 7-1 entering November. If that plays out and is the case, I would presume when everybody starts to really pay attention to the college football playoff predictions, Nebraska is going to be on the screen. I don't know where they will be, but they've got to be listed somewhere.
Hey, I think that's a perfect metaphor for where Nebraska is trying to get. Just be on the screen, right? Just get yourself on the screen.
You don't have to get on the screen by beating a big-time team. Would that be nice? Yes. But you don't have to do that. Maybe we'll have the conversation at the beginning of November and have a different tone about it, because I still remember under Mike Riley when Nebraska started the season so strong. They went to, I believe, Indiana. That was the famous Tommy Armstrong Jr. quote where he goes, somebody was asking about Nebraska being ranked, and the record looked a little bit like fool's gold because Nebraska hadn't really played anybody. And Tommy goes, if they don't like us, take us out. Take us out like 5 times. And it was so passionate. And for me, I'll never forget that moment, because his argument was Nebraska's playing the schedule that they have. And, if they think 7-1 isn't good enough to be a top 15 team, don't have them in the top 15. But by nature, winning games that, what are we starting to, not, feel so good about winning games? They have to be big games? Okay, you can do that in the SEC. Right now, with what Nebraska has on the schedule in the Big Ten, they don't have that luxury. So just win the games you can. And I think if they're 7-1, they're going to be on the screen. And I do think that's kind of a gauge of taking the next step.
Kevin, so I just want to follow up with that too, just about, you talk about what you're able to watch over the past weekend, top 25 voting. Obviously you can't, the problem is that Nebraska wasn't in the top 25 in the preseason. That's why they're going to be kind of, knocked down a peg, not getting as many votes as they might have or would have after a Michigan loss a couple weeks ago. But are there any other teams in that category with Nebraska that you would consider maybe should be receiving more top 25 consideration, should be in the top 25, should be higher, just based off of where they were in the preseason rankings?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Because I think Mississippi State's one of those. I think, like you said earlier, I think they're one of them.
Possibly. But it's going to be so hard to go apples to apples with Nebraska and Mississippi State. One of the teams that I first thought of was BYU. Now, granted, they're in the rankings right now, but I think if Nebraska's on the field with BYU, I don't know if the game's played at a neutral site. I don't know who I'm picking. I I think BYU might be the favorite, but I think that Nebraska is just as good as BYU from what I've seen from them so far this year. So I don't think, just going off of the eye test and without looking at, resumes and getting too far into the metrics of both teams, just on feel and what I've seen with the naked eye, I feel like there's not a whole lot of separation between Nebraska and a team that is currently in the back half of the top 25.
That's our guy, Kevin Sjuts, 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kevin.
That is Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Ironically, another team I think that kind of fits into that category is USC.
Ooh.
They weren't ranked to start the season. They kind of creeped their way in. They lost to Illinois. Now they're out. I think it's a very similar situation. They didn't get a lot of respect coming into the season because of what they did last year or what they didn't do last year. And I think they're in obviously very different teams, constructed very differently, but I think they're in sort of similar spots.
Yeah, and I mean that was something that I was just kind of peeking at the AP Top 25 again last night. Sorry, brain's not working yet. That they were just looking at some of these teams that I feel differently about than what their ranking really is. And I don't want to get in the whole AP conversation again, but really that's why the preseason polls mean so little to me, because we're still ranking teams based off of what we thought their preseason evaluation was, right? We've talked about LSU before last week. We've talked about LSU like this week too. I don't think LSU is a top 15 team. And the only reason that they are still in the top 15 after a loss, and granted, it's a good loss to have, but the only reason they are
because we thought Florida and Clemson were good. And they started high.
Yeah, they were a top 5 team in the preseason. That's why.
They started high. We thought Florida and Clemson were good. None of those things are true.
Yeah.
And now they're still in the top 15. Mississippi State's a great example. Mississippi State has a quality loss to Tennessee, and that's their only loss.
And they have maybe one of the better wins on any non-conference resume.
With Arizona State?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think is going to turn out to be a good win.
Yeah.
I think Nebraska-Cincinnati win is going to turn out to be a good win. This is why people, when I went on my rant about the AP Top 25 poll, this is why it makes me mad, though, because it does matter. We're a month into we're a third of the way through the season. We're still dealing with the repercussions of not replications. That's not a thing.
Repercussions.
Repercussions of the fact that we had this preconceived notion of teams. I don't know what to do about it. Right? They're not going to get rid of the preseason polls. I understand that.
Well, because it's content, right? That's all that it is. Like it used to actually be a barometer because you were able to kind of like get the slate and you had to kind of know how to rank teams to award national championships, that sort of stuff.
Also, there's so much turnover from year to year and so much roster change. Like we're just guessing now.
Yes.
For the most part, we're just guessing. We're like LSU, that's a quality program. They're probably going to be good. Their quarterback's returning. Sure.
Yeah.
Like we have no idea anymore because you have no idea. Even if you're like, oh, they got good players in, we don't know what that's going to look like as they try and play together on a team and probably with a new coordinator and whatever else the variables are there. So we're literally just guessing. And then the problem is, and maybe it's me going back to not trusting the committee to use their own eyeballs because I've seen them make dumb decisions over and over again.
Are you talking AP or College Football Playoff Committee?
The College Football Playoff Committee, because here's the problem. I think the College Football Playoff Committee, I mean, they obviously also see the polls.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, it's not like they are it's not like we cryo freeze them until it's time for them to watch football and make rankings. They're aware of everything that's going on. They're aware of the narratives. They're aware of everything. And they're going to look back and they're going to look at the names on the schedule and be like, oh, well, I mean, when LSU beat Clemson in Florida. And
it was
like
a top 10 team.
Like, no, it wasn't a top 10. It was never a top 10 win. It's because these morons thought that Florida and DJ Lagway was not going to poop the bed.
Right.
Guess what? They need to clean up. Right. So you have LSU here now, and like you can't remove that from people's brains.
Yeah.
And so that's why I care. That's why it's a problem to me, because I get it's like, well, the AP doesn't decide the national champion and they don't pick the play. Yes, but it's all part of the conversation.
Right. Because then they become victories and different markers for later on.
We look at it totally differently. We look at Arizona State differently because we didn't think Mississippi State was good.
Yeah.
And I asked this earlier in the week. I was like, are we sure? Did we not? Like, did we write Arizona State off too quickly? Like, if Mississippi State's good.
Yes, I did. Yes.
If Mississippi State's good and that's a 24-20 loss, and then they go through and do well in a Big 12 that we all think is good and deep, then they're still going to get dinged for the Mississippi State loss, and we're halfway through the season almost?
Arizona State went from a top 10 team to receiving votes, and now are creeping their way back into the top 25. I keep thinking back, and obviously I know that you have your issues with Kurt Cignetti and everything, but if Indiana last year, because that's what we can go off of, right? We knew a full season of kind of what this expectation looks like in this argument. If Indiana went from, instead of being voted one of the last teams in the Big Ten last year coming in and not receiving a single vote in either poll, if they started last year at number 19, they would have been a top 3 team throughout most of the college football season last year.
Yeah, no,
because they would have been 11-1, and yes, you can make the argument, oh, they didn't play anybody, whatever.
They would have got dinged pretty heavily for the Ohio State loss because that was their first real challenge.
But they still would have ended up being.
But they would not have been on the bubble.
Yes, exactly.
Like they were very close to not making the college
But because their preseason, thank you, wow, Shane, that was quick.
Ding.
But because they were dinged at the very beginning of the season and the preseason expectations, they never got the chance to be able to work their way completely and cleanly up the poll. Whereas look at the difference now with Alabama. Alabama wins a game over a really good Georgia team that a lot of people would consider probably an SEC contender, college football playoff contender, even title contender, right? You can add all those kind of characteristics to it. They lost to an unranked Florida State team that then became a top 10 team that then also lost. Alabama immediately shoots back up in the AP rankings because they, I guess, just qualified the win because they were a preseason top 10 team in the first place. They just kind of rework the polls however they see fit, and it doesn't apply to every other team. It only applies to the teams in which they had their preseason feelings about.
Well, and again, they probably would not have fallen 20 spots or 18 spots or whatever it was after losing to Florida State if you sit there and thought Florida State was good to start the season, right? It's the same thing you're talking about where teams were getting dinged by Indiana last year for losing to them, and you're like, oh, Indiana's actually really good, so maybe this isn't such a bad loss anymore. That's why I get worked up about this stuff, because it does matter. It does impact the way we view these teams. It does impact the way the College Football Playoff Committee selects these teams, and it is a total crapshoot now more than ever to preseason rank these teams. Not as much as a crapshoot as it is to preseason rank quarterbacks, apparently. But apparently it's not that much better when you get into the third of the way, 5 games into the season anyway, because Bill Conley from ESPN.
Oh, is he back?
He ranked all 68 power conference quarterbacks.
Okay.
Would you like to guess?
Wait, when was this? Is this like fresh?
This is like minutes ago.
Oh, no. So you're coming in hot.
I'm coming in hot.
You're throwing water on that pan.
Who do you think is? It's like a fart in a skillet. Who do you think's number 1?
On current, so based on the first 4 games?
Only on the first, what we've played so far. Who do you think is the number 1 quarterback in the country?
John Mateer injured? Geez. Dante Moore? Go Dante Moore?
Jaden Maeva.
Okay. Sure. Okay, yeah. I mean,
no.
I can
The answer's no.
I can squint and see it, I guess, but sure. Maybe.
The answer's no.
Okay.
Dante Moore's a fine answer. Fernando Mendoza would have been a fine answer.
Okay, Mendoza would be a good answer, yeah. I would even given Mateer with the injury. Like, I would have considered that.
I'm open to it.
Okay.
Diego Pavia would have been a fine answer.
Love me some Diego.
I know you guys do.
A lot of Team Roston guys on that list.
So here's what I'd like to.
Is young Dylan not on that list?
Oh, he's on the list because it's every power conference quarterback.
Oh, good.
Every power conference quarterback. Yeah. Would you like to guess where Dylan Raiola is on this list?
He's got to be at least top. Listen, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to expand this list wider than it needs to be. He has to at least be top 25.
He is exactly number 25.
That is actually insane. I hate that.
Do you want to know who number 6 is?
Bryce Underwood.
Nope.
Oh.
It is a guy that Nebraska has played.
Brendan Sorsby.
Brendan Sorsby's number 6.
That's crazy. Well, how many passing yards did Dylan Raiola have in that game? And a win for Nebraska, by the way.
240.
Oh, really?
Something like that.
So Sorsby must have had like 300 or something?
No, he had approximately 200 fewer than that.
Whoa, really? And, well, then Sorsby must have beaten Nebraska that day,
No,
right?
That was also a loss.
Oh, jeez. Oof. That's tough. Well, then how many other, Power 4 teams has Cincinnati beaten then?
I believe the 1.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oof.
just got the 1 now.
So he's getting a lot of credit for non-conference, blowout wins and big passing stats that way.
Shoot, he might be. Yeah, that's weird.
But it's hard to apply that same logic to a different quarterback.
Apparently it is.
Very interesting.
Brendan Sorsby ranked number 6. Also some guys. I'm just gonna go down this list real quick.
Please.
You tell me if you would take these guys over Dylan Raiola.
I think I know what we're gonna start asking Bill about here in a couple minutes.
So we're going to talk to Bill Bennett from the Sporting News here in just a second. Not Bill Conley, who made this stupid list. Jaden Maeva.
Tag him, Rico.
Would you Would you take Jaden Maeva over Dylan Raiola?
I would not.
Okay. Listen, I'm not even going to ask about Pavia, Chambliss, Mendoza, Moore, because I think those are fine answers.
Yeah, I would agree. Like after 4 games,
those guys are all balling.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, if you want to get
I would also argue that it's probably just a wash, but teach their own.
Yeah, I don't think any of those guys are clearly above him, but like same neighborhood. I'm not gonna pick nits about that. Brendan Sorsby, I'm absolutely taking Dylan ahead of.
Dylan,
like that is a crazy take. CJ Carr.
Yeah, take Dylan.
Number 7.
One. That's crazy.
Listen, Ty Simpson, fine. Ty Simpson ahead of him, cool.
Yeah.
Ty Simpson's been really good.
Yeah.
Ty Simpson's been really good. Damon Williams. Very different type of quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, for what Washington is going to do, they'd probably keep Damon Williams. But like, if I'm building my team, I'm still going to take Dylan.
Is he 16 spots better than Dylan?
He is not. No.
Maybe a wash at best.
At best, yes.
Jalen Daniels.
No, I'd take Dylan.
I would say wash at best. If you're talking about,
if we're talking first 4 games of this season and not what we know in its entirety, sure. Yes, yeah.
Julian Sayin.
Julian Sayin. He really hasn't blown the doors off of anybody.
He's been pretty mediocre.
I mean, again, that's more of a case of the talent around him and the team he has. But I would take Dylan because, again, like here's what it is. It's like if you called that team up and you're like, you can have Dylan Raiola, but we'll take your quarterback.
Yeah.
There are some teams that hang up right away. There are some programs that would at least listen. Ohio State's listening.
Yeah.
Like they're for sure listening.
100%. John Mateer, we'll call it a wash.
Yep.
Would you like Chandler Morris from Virginia or Dylan Raiola?
Dylan Raiola.
Okay. Taylor Green, call it a wash. He's been really good. Luke Altmaier, call it a wash.
Yeah, call it a wash for right now. For 4 games.
Tommy Castellanos from Florida State. He's played really well.
He has played really well. I still think Florida State listens. They listen to that call.
Joey Aguilar, you think Tennessee takes that call?
Ooh.
He's thrown 5 interceptions in his last 3 games.
I don't know, but I don't know. That's tough, though. They really like Aguilar.
5 interceptions.
They're listening.
5 interceptions in his last 3 games.
They're going to listen, yeah.
You taking him over Gunnar Stockton?
Yes, I'm taking it over Gunnar Stockton.
Darian Mensah?
Yes.
Do you think Iowa State would trade Rocco Beck for Dylan Raiola straight up?
Yeah, I'm sure Matt Campbell would love that call. Be like, yeah. Rocco, hey.
Listen, I love Rocco Beck. I am a Rocco Beck stan.
Yeah.
They would say yes immediately, and they pull the Billy Bean where they hang up the phone before you can change your mind.
Right. Yeah.
That's 100% what would happen. Just got to remind you that some people who do this for a living don't know what they're talking about. That is the 8 o'clock hour. We've got Bill Bender coming up here at 9 o'clock here on Hurrdat Sports Live.
Back to busy means Kia savings this September at Edwards Kia. Lease the 2026 Kia Sportage starting at just $299 a month, 36 months with zero due-it signing. Capability, comfort, and ready for back to busy. Or drive the 2026 Kia Seltos, lease starting at $279 a month, 36 months with zero due-it signing. Compact SUV, big value built for the season.
It pays to make the drive.
It pays to make the drive to Edwards Kia in Council Bluffs.
Well, the big plays are happening when? In the run game. They're only happening in the run game. So it's very specific. It's not like they're running the ball for 50 yards and throwing the ball for 50 yards. So I think we have a good plan in terms of what we're doing when we think they're going to throw the ball. So we've got to solve the obvious, which is not just the run defense, but the explosive plays that we're giving up in the run defense. And really it comes down to guys being in their gaps, guys having the ability to get off blocks. Credit to the other team. I think I said this to you guys in the past, like I have to evaluate, can they block us? Can we tackle them? And I think through really the Cincinnati game and the Michigan game, because they're the two obviously comparable opponents in terms of talent similar to ours or better, you have to be able to evaluate. And right now we're getting blocked too much and we're not tackling them well enough. And we have to practice that. We have to emphasize that. At times maybe, we got to put more guys in the box, which then, as you know, when it's 11 on 11 and the quarterback's running the ball, the more you put in the box, the more you make yourself susceptible to throws down the field. But we obviously have to address that because that's the elephant in the room. It's Captain Obvious can figure out that we're giving up too many explosive runs.
Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Welcome back. Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Sjuts Federal Credit Union. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Bill Bender. He is a senior writer for Sporting News. Bill, how are we doing this morning?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive right into this thing, because obviously we're coming off a huge week of college football, a ton of really big matchups, and I've sort of been trying to ask myself throughout the week as I've digested the results, which game I think I learned the most from. Do you have a game where you go, I feel like I learned the most about either team because of that game?
I think Ole Miss, honestly. It was a weird pick because I know
like
there were two larger games, because Ole Miss might be ready to finally go to the playoff. That was a big win for them, and I kind of learned that LSU is just, as much as I love their defense, the offense isn't quite there. I think Caden Durham's injury had something to do with that. They couldn't run the ball, but Ole Miss and Trinidad Chambliss, I mean, you know, I think last time I talked to you guys, we weren't talking about a Ferris State transfer coming off 3 straight 300-yard games, right?
We were not. No, we certainly were not, Bill. I'm glad you brought up that game, though, because we were talking earlier about sort of the AP poll and the effect that it has on our perception of some of these teams, right? And LSU is a super interesting case, because not only did they start highly ranked, but so did two of their marquee wins that have so far have not aged well at all in Clemson and Florida. As you look at LSU, you see the loss to Ole Miss, you see the wins that they had kind of disintegrating in terms of quality. What do you do with LSU?
That's a great question. I think, you know, you talk about the AP poll, and, you know, there's varying opinions on that. I'm a strong supporter of the AP poll. I think it's fun. I think, you know, you look back at the preseason poll, and we take shots at it all the time. People that do that cover this sport, love this sport, and I try to make one every Saturday night. I don't vote on the AP poll, but I kind of make my own, you know, and see, okay, here's what I think it's going to be. And LSU was the hard one over the weekend, because all these SEC schools are hard to sort out right now. Very hard to sort out. So, you know, yesterday I went through all their schedules and tried to figure out, you know, here's what I think their record might be at the end of the year. Of course, that's going to get blown up. But here's my finding that you guys might think is interesting. I think the SEC will have 5 10-win teams.
Oh.
There's a very good chance of that. And there's some games that'll swing that. But if they have 5 10-win teams, they're probably going to have 5 playoff teams.
We hate to hear that.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. But okay, so Bill, let me ask you about that. So in that scenario, if there's that many SEC representatives for the college football playoff, how do you see the Big 12 then shaking out from what you've seen so far through the first few weeks of their conference play? Because they seem to be a complete mess, and that everyone's just going to kind of eat each other up, and they're going to end up maybe just having one representative in the conference champion.
You know, by mess, we mean fun.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
it's really good and deep, right? But it's messy.
Mess, yeah, and I think you're right. It is a little messy, because I think Texas Tech is very good. They're the one that kind of sticks out to me. They took it to Utah on the road. I like their defense up front. The problem here is like Iowa State, for example. Iowa State had a fantastic September. Has a veteran quarterback, and they're in my backyard this weekend in Cincinnati, and they're an underdog. So, like, that's hard to read when you see that. You know, I think they have 3 or 4 teams. They're probably shaped up to be a one-bid league because of that, because they're doing things. It's kind of like, I was making this comparison yesterday. The SEC and the Big 12 are a little bit like the NFL. It's like we change our mind every week about who the best team is.
Yep.
And that's a good thing for publicity.
Mm-hmm.
In the Big 12 case, I don't know if it's a good thing for getting a bunch of playoff teams.
Bill, is it one of those scenarios, and I wonder if it's the same with the ACC as well, in the leagues that are in danger of being one-bid leagues? Would it actually be beneficial if, let's say, Texas Tech in the Big 12 and Miami in the ACC are the best teams, which I think is the case at this point? Would it be actually best for both of those conferences if those teams went undefeated and then lost in their respective championship games so that you actually have a shot of getting 2 teams in?
Right. And like Miami, you were talking about them. Miami, I think I'm almost ready to call them national championship good, like caliber. Now they got to go to Doak this weekend and we'll find out. And it's too bad. In some ways, it's too bad Florida State lost because I kind of wanted to see a top 10 matchup there. On the other hand, it's pretty cool seeing that scene at Virginia. But yeah, if Miami were to go to the championship game, I know Georgia Tech's still undefeated. I think Louisville's a little underrated. That Louisville-Virginia game's like a hidden gem on the schedule this week.
Yeah.
So I think watch that one. So yeah, but to your point, yeah. And then if you're the Big 12, you want that to happen because a couple wrinkles in this playoff race that are coming are, one, Notre Dame's got its act together. And if they reel off 10 straight wins, it would be hard to leave them out if, Miami wins the ACC. You'd be like, well, that's not a bad loss at all. And, the A&M loss is what it is. So, and then you get into the Big Ten, and I think the Big Ten is, I would say four teams, and it's pretty clear who those 4 teams are right now. But there are some teams lurking behind them that I think can get in the mix.
Bill, what do you do with quality wins versus accumulation of wins, right? Because I think that's the argument probably against Notre Dame. Their best opportunity for a win the rest of the year is going to be USC. We really don't know I at least don't really have a good feel on what I think USC is yet this year. But like you said, they very easily could be 10-2. I think that case could be made for some of the SEC teams. If you're right and you have 5 teams that go with 10 wins in the SEC as well, a couple of those probably aren't going to have crazy good quality of wins, and the 10 wins is kind of just the nature of how their schedule broke this year. Like, if you're the college football playoff committee, how do you weigh, hey, this team went 10-2 in a power conference versus they didn't beat anybody that we think very much of?
And that's the problem with Notre Dame. And I'm not against Notre Dame. I went to a Catholic school. I have plenty of Notre Dame friends. My best friend's a Notre Dame fan, all right? I've had this conversation 1,000 times about them joining the Big Ten and what it means and how cool it was growing up watching them play, Michigan and Michigan State and Purdue and Ohio State the last few years. So, you guys, out your way, would it be awesome if Nebraska and Notre Dame traded home and homes? Come on, let's go.
I'm in. Let's do it.
I'm for it.
Yeah, I'm in right now if they did that.
Sign me up.
I think the problem with them is, they don't have that collection in the SEC or the Big Ten. And one of the potential things down the line could be, let's say A&M goes 10-2, and some of their wins haven't been pretty, and Notre Dame goes 10-2, and they lost to A&M at the end of that game. You got to take A&M over them. And even if A&M's like the 5th best team in the SEC. And the Big Ten, to me, if you get 10 wins in the Big Ten, that's kind of the benchmark for me based on what happened last year. If you get to 10, you're going to be fine. And I think there are maybe 5 schools in the Big Ten that could possibly do that. And with the 3 or 4 at the top, Ohio State's a lock to do that, and Oregon's a lock to do that. It's those other ones that we'll see.
Bill, I want to push back a little bit on your kind of Big Ten comment there. So looking at Indiana's remaining schedule, if they were to go unbeaten against Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Purdue, that leaves obviously their big top 10 matchups against Indiana or against Oregon and against Penn State. Is it too far to say that Indiana, just based off of their national conversation, kind of what goes around their program and their 2 losses kind of to end their season last year, if they don't split those games, win one against Oregon or win one against Penn State and lose the other, that they are out of the college football playoff?
Yeah, that's a good pushback because I think you're right. And I don't admit being wrong often, but let's say if they've got it, let's for the exercise, if they need 2 of the last 3. And I love doing stuff like this, by the way. So you got to take 2 of these 3, and it's A&M, Notre Dame, and Indiana. And Indiana loses those 2 games you talk about. I'd be pretty close. Now, I'll set up a little bit with the uniform argument. If Michigan goes 10-2, and their only losses are Oklahoma and Ohio State, and they're in that conversation, with going out to Oklahoma and losing in a game that, it's a step-out game to me, that I think they would take Michigan in that case because the Wolverines would be 8-1 in Big Ten play and only have those 2 losses. And I don't think anybody's getting penalized for losing to Ohio State right now.
Bill, I do wonder, you mentioned the Oklahoma game with Michigan, which I do think is fascinating, right? Do you think at some point we'll see that the College Football Playoff Committee is kind of going out of their way not to penalize teams for going and taking those games? Because I do think it's, I think it's better for college football that those games exist. Like, do you think at some point they'll just say, hey, like, if you went on the road against a good team and you lost a close game, we're not really going to kill you for that?
Yeah, I hope so. And then that means they have to take 9-3 teams that are at-large teams.
Yeah.
Because you got to give like last year we had this big, long argument. I think the difference was Indiana was 11-1.
Right.
And Alabama had lost that game at Oklahoma in conference play. But I'm all about it. I was at the Ohio State-Texas game. And Texas shouldn't be penalized for that. It was a 1-score game, and their defense is very good, and now they got to go through the SEC grind. And I know college football, and I'm one of those guys. I think I'm sensing that you guys kind of agree with me, maybe, that I think the sport has become a little SEC Big Ten centric because of the super conferences. And those are 2 different conferences in the challenges, though. I think the SEC has more teams that are capable of making the playoffs, but that doesn't have this added wrinkle of travel that is very real. I mean, Lincoln Riley had a point last week when he talked about going from an 11 a.m. kick to a really early kick in Illinois. But, I think we should all say, they signed up for that. It's not like when you signed the Big Ten contract, you didn't check a map and say, Rutgers is way over there. Yeah, we're going to have to go there sometime.
Bill, that is a good point. Rutgers is way over there, even for us here in Nebraska. Bill, I do want to ask you about Nebraska real quick. I know we just have you for a couple more minutes here before you got to get going, but I do want to ask you about Nebraska real quick. If they navigate this next 4-game stretch where they go at Michigan State, at Maryland, Michigan State at home, at Maryland, at Minnesota, and then Northwestern at home, and are 7-1 going into USC on November 1st. In your mind, will that mean to you they've taken that next step under Matt Rule, where maybe they're not ready to be in that playoff conversation yet, maybe they're not ready to be relevant on that scale, but they've gotten past the hump of where they've been for the last 10 years?
I talked to Matt Rule a couple of weeks ago, and I love his style.
Mm-hmm.
He's great to talk to, great interview for us, no question. And one of the things he was hinting at was that Michigan game wasn't the end-all, be-all of the season. It was a moment, and, you want more moments at Nebraska. That was a great game, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dylan Raiola is starting to prove that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. A lot of hyped quarterbacks have not lived up to that this year. I think he's playing very well. The thing in that Michigan game was Michigan had it on the defensive front, and they still have it on that defensive front. But to answer your question, yeah, that would show consistency. That would show that they're not losing those games that get in the way. So if they were able to get to that USC game and do that, I mean, they could still be theoretically a playoff contender. Like I said, the Big Ten, that second tier with Michigan and Indiana and Nebraska and USC and Illinois, it's going to be interesting to see who sorts out. I still think Penn State, we didn't really talk about Penn State, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
The tough loss for Penn State, I was there. I still think they have an excellent defense. It's just at some point, and you guys are going through it on a different level, but at some point you got to break through and beat those top 10 teams when you have the cards that you have.
That is Bill Bender from the Sporting News. Bill, appreciate your time. As always, great stuff. We'll talk to you again soon.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me on. Have a great week.
Thanks, Bill.
That is Bill Bender from the Sporting News. He did mention some of the hyped guys that hadn't been doing so well. Let's return to our list from Bill Conley.
Why are we doing this again?
I want to know where some of these guys checked in.
Okay.
Where do you think Arch Manning is right now? In the top 68.
22.
No, he is below Dylan.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
32.
41.
Ooh, that's a steep drop.
Here's a fun one.
That's a bad pick. Who would take him first overall?
I don't know. Let's have a different question though. Where do you think DJ Lagway is?
62.
61.
I was almost there.
That was pretty
almost
good.
There. Almost there. I felt pretty good about that.
61 out of 68.
So maybe Bill has a relative idea of what he's talking about. Relative.
You know, you want some names of people that are ahead of DJ Lagway? This is fun for me. Robbie Ashford of Wake Forest.
Ooh.
Ben Gulbranson of Stanford.
Notable power.
Nico.
Oh, no.
58.
Never go full Nico.
Mark Gronowski, 57.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Gronowski.
You got Gronowski.
Where do you think Drew Aller is?
Oh, that's a good question. He's probably 33.
55.
Whoa, that's a lot lower than I thought. Is he playing that bad? I mean, I know it wasn't a great final play, obviously, against Oregon, but he did get them back in the game.
He did. I think the problem is the offense in general has been so mediocre. It's the same thing with Lenore Sellers, right?
Yeah.
Sellers is, I believe, one spot behind Dylan. But Sellers, while his numbers personally are so good, they've struggled so much to score.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard to put him any higher than that. Cade Klubnik is at 54.
Wow. That's not surprising, though. I mean, he's had a meteoric drop. Where's Miller Moss? I'm curious.
Real quick, before I get to Miller Moss, this might be my favorite entry on the list. Listed at 53, 8 spots ahead of DJ Lagway, is just listed 3 injured QBs from UCF.
Oh, good for them. Shout out Scofer.
Okay, let's look at Miller Moss.
That's crazy.
Miller Moss is 36.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that.
36. Your guy, Kevin Jennings, is 35.
Okay.
Aiden Childs, who we will see this weekend, is 33. Let's see. Sam Levitt is 31. Kaliak Manis from Rutgers, 30.
Wow. Okay, so Dylan was 20, what?
25.
25. Okay, so Dylan was 25. Who are the 4 in front of him?
The 4 directly in front of him?
Mm-hmm.
Rocco Becht is 24.
Okay.
Josh Hoover, Darian Mensah, and Sawyer Robertson.
So I know we talked about like the top end.
Yeah, so like
already,
honestly, those 4, I don't have a huge problem with him being in the same neighborhood as. There's a few guys ahead of them that I'm like, what are we talking about?
But this was the preseason conversation we had too, and they did this with the Athletic, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they had that college football quarterback ranking, and it was like the top 40, and he was 37, 39, something like that.
I believe 38, 39.
Oh no, it was Gronowski was 37, he was 38.
Yeah.
I think it was somewhere around there.
Yeah.
The argument that I remember we had that day when that came out, or the day after, was that the gap is not that large between Dylan and the rest. So if we take what we said then, he's, I mean, 2 different polls, 2 different rankings, 2 different people, right? But he's technically up 13 spots.
Yeah.
I still would make the solid argument that he is not 24 spots away from 1. I'm not saying he's the top quarterback. Some people can make that argument, and I would definitely listen, and I would nod my head in agreement that he's the top quarterback in college football through 4 games of what we've seen of a season. But the gap is not that large. He is not 24 players away from that spot.
You cannot convince me he's outside the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, I will not accept that. If you tell me he's outside the top 10, I don't think you know what you're talking about. I don't.
If he's right at 10, do you feel better? I mean, I know you'd still make an argument, but if he's at 10.
Yeah, no, because there's 10 guys that I can be like, okay, I mean, we went through this, right?
Yeah.
Let's keep track for me, okay? Diego Pavia.
Okay.
Trinidad Chambliss.
Okay.
Fernando Mendoza.
Okay.
Dante Moore.
Okay.
No. Ty Simpson.
Okay.
Mateer. Healthy Mateer.
Again, this is what we've seen through
just what
5
we know,
weeks of the regular season.
What we know so far. I mean, Sawyer Robertson's been really good. If you put him ahead, I probably wouldn't throw a fit.
Okay. And we have different opinions on Aguilar, but yeah.
I think Aguilar has started turning the ball over a lot as soon as he started playing power conference opponents.
Okay, so we're at 7. What about Levitt? Would you put Levitt?
Not through 4 games. If I'm including last year, yes, because I liked what he did last year. I don't think I can put him in the top 10. I probably wouldn't throw a fit over it, but I'm not going to put him in the top 10.
So at worst you have Dylan at 8. I mean, that's what we just said, right?
That gives me a little leeway.
That
gives me a little leeway. If you want to throw a couple more guys in there, I'm not going to throw a fit over, but I can't get him outside the top 10.
Yeah.
I can't. Like, there's
statistically how he's played, who he has played. I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah, he's played half of his games are against power conference opponents at this point. He performed against those opponents. He's performed against everyone.
How many of the quarterbacks in front of him are on teams that are ranked outside of Sorsby?
Interesting. Let's take a look here. Becht is ranked.
Yep.
Not everybody. TCU is ranked. Duke is not, and they've lost 2 games, so that's weird. Baylor's not, and they've lost at least a couple games. Stockton is, Prabula is, Beck is, Aguilar is, Castellanos is, Altmaier is, Taylor Green is not, Chandler Morris is not, Oklahoma is, Ohio State is, Kansas is not, Washington isn't, Alabama is, Notre Dame is, Cincinnati not, Oregon yes, Indiana yes, Ole Miss yes, Vandy yes, SC yes.
So yeah,
kind of 2/3.
Yeah, so kind of
it's a mix though.
Yeah, kind of weird that
Yeah, like Mensa doesn't make sense because it's like, hey, they've lost. Like it's not a winning thing for them either.
Right.
His QBR is lower. Like, yes, he's been good individually, but I don't know how you put Mensa over Dylan Raiola. I don't understand it.
Yeah, that is interesting. There's like a lot of different ways to look at it too. And like, I mean, I'll give credit. He did rank every single quarterback, and he put 3 injured UCF quarterbacks in front of your best friend DJ Lagway.
Hilarious.
And, I mean,
hilarious.
It is. That's just very unique. I think the only thing that Dylan can do is he just keeps doing what he's been doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because the only thing at the end of the season, they're just going to have to prove you're going to have to, if he continues on the streak that he's on, by the time you hit the end of the season, if Nebraska wins the games that they need to win, and if they take down a top 25 team, I mean, we're going to know, because if Jaden Maeva and Dylan Raiola are both healthy and play on November 1st, it's going to be a top 25 game or just outside of it, and that's going to be a game that national eyes will look on, and then Bill Connolly's list on November 4th will look a little bit different, because if Dylan wins a head-to-head against Jaden Maeva, the number 1 quarterback on that list, I mean, what kind of argument can you make after that?
I don't imagine Jaden Maeva will be number 1 on that list in November.
Yeah.
I would have a hard time believing that. I have a hard time believing he's number 1 now. I get that the numbers look good. They also, it's the same argument people make against Dylan. They put up a ton of numbers against a couple of really bad teams. And, then he goes out and loses to Illinois, and it's like, okay, yeah, the numbers are okay there.
Yeah.
But Dylan doesn't get credit for the same thing against Michigan. Like, what are we doing here? And so I that's where I have
the Tom Fornelli effect. How dare he?
Damn Tom Fornelli. All his nonsense and non-ball knowing.
We are not.
I will never be past that.
We are not past that.
I will never be past that. And to be clear, I don't want Dylan paying any attention to any of this.
No.
Right? That's my job. His job is to go play football.
But again, that's the thing, though, is that Dylan doesn't have to do anything differently.
Exactly.
There's nothing that Dylan needs to do differently to change this narrative. He just continues what he's been doing, and the narrative will catch up.
Yes, just keep balling.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. Let me worry about the haters. I will be your personal hater.
You're a social media bodyguard. Is what you are.
I'm the bouncer for all the haters.
Blocking out the haters.
Yeah, just block out the haters. No ears, no eyes. Block those guys out. Speaking of quarterbacks, though, I want to go to the NFL.
Okay.
Let's take a break here. I have a question. I need a tree of trust moment here.
Uh-oh.
I have a question to ask.
Build the branches.
I have a question to ask. Rico says we're not in the tree of trust. Is it only the tree of trust when DB's here?
Is it like an olive branch?
No, I'm going to need more than a branch. I need the whole tree.
You need the whole tree.
I need the whole tree.
The what tree, Shane?
Olive.
The hoe tree.
The hoe tree.
Oh.
Great. Now I got to mark this one as explicit.
What grows on that one? That's Austin. I'm Ravi. We'll be back here in just a minute. Before we leave, though, gotta remind you, about a week away, and by about, I mean exactly a week away, from Wear Black Give Back. UNO's 6th annual Giving Day. 24 hours of giving kicks off October 8th at noon and lasts through October 9th. Last year, they made almost $1 million from support from people like you. This year, they're trying to reach 6,500 individual gifts to support MAV athletics, student assistance, research, service, scholarships, and more. Mark your calendars. Wear Black Give Back October 8th through the 9th. And for every $75 donation, you get a UNO belt bag. It's givingday.unomaha.edu. We'll be back with more.
Back to busy means Kia savings this September at Edwards Kia. Lease the 2026 Kia Sportage starting at just $299 a month, 36 months with zero due-it signing. Capability, comfort, and ready for back to busy. Or drive the 2026 Kia Seltos, lease starting at $279 a month, 36 months with zero due-it signing. Compact SUV, big value built for the season.
It pays to make the drive.
It pays to make the drive to Edwards Kia in Council Bluffs.
Well, the big plays are happening when? In the run game. They're only happening in the run game. So it's very specific. It's not like they're running the ball for 50 yards and throwing the ball for 50 yards. So I think we have a good plan in terms of what we're doing when we think they're going to throw the ball. So we've got to solve the obvious, which is not just the run defense, but the explosive plays that we're giving up in the run defense. And really it comes down to guys being in their gaps, guys having the ability to get off blocks. Credit to the other team. I think I said this to you guys in the past, like, I have to evaluate, can they block us? Can we tackle them? And I think through really the Cincinnati game and the Michigan game, because they're the two obviously comparable opponents in terms of talent similar to ours or better, you have to be able to evaluate. And right now we're getting blocked too much and we're not tackling them well enough. And we have to practice that. We have to emphasize that. At times maybe, we got to put more guys in the box, which then, as you know, when it's 11 on 11 and the quarterback's running the ball, the more you put in the box, the more you make yourself susceptible to throws down the field. But we obviously have to address that because that's the elephant in the room. That's Captain Obvious can figure out that we're giving up too many explosive runs.
We're in the neighborhood, just down the street. With a wide variety of home equity products to help you create a relaxing oasis. So you can kick back and relax in comfort. Centris Federal Credit Union. We are where you are.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live. We're always trying to make winning moves, and one way you can make a winning move is with Centris Federal Credit Union. Their certificate and savings account bundle offers a competitive rate when you open a certificate and a new savings account. That's two excellent rates that can help your financial goals. Discover more about certificate and savings account bundles today at centrisfcu.org. Terms and conditions apply. Federally insured by NCUA. All right. So I have a question. It's Tree of Trust time.
Oh,
Tree of Trust time.
Okay.
This is an NFL quarterback question.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So I been watching last couple weeks here. This is before he got a little bit dinged up. Okay, so this is not taking the injury into account.
We're finally having the conversation about Joe Flacco.
I still don't understand. Like, is it 2013 and nobody told me? Like, the breaking news. That's the last time Joe Flacco being benched would have been breaking news. It's 2013.
He's doing his best. Okay.
I appreciate that he is doing his best. His best is in his 40s, and they drafted 2 quarterbacks this year, and they're the Browns, and they're very bad. Why is that breaking news? That it took over the entire screen. It wasn't even just the scroll at the bottom that turns yellow. They took over the entire screen with a breaking news graphic for Joe Flacco. In the year 2025, the year of our Lord. What are we talking about?
You wouldn't want a breaking news graphic for an elite quarterback? That's what you're trying to say?
I'm not even.
Don't matter to me.
We're not going to do that. David got it right. It is about Lamar.
What?
It's about Lamar. He's a very good quarterback. It felt like, I want to know if I'm crazy here or not, about this specifically, not in general. It felt like even pre-injury, and maybe he was banged up and we didn't know it, so that could be a thing. But the last 2 weeks in particular, I'm watching Lamar Jackson.
It's a lot of flock going on. Let's go.
It felt like he had maybe lost a step.
Ooh, lost a step. That's a bold claim, Ravi.
Listen, I'm seeing him get pressured, and I have this vision of Lamar Jackson in my head from his entire career, where he's escaping some of the pressures that it seems like are getting home now. And so that's not to say he's not still very, very good. That's not to say they can't win a Super Bowl if they ever figure out how to play defense, which is certainly not his fault.
Right.
It just seems like from the escapability standpoint, where it seemed almost impossible to actually sack him on a consistent basis, feel like he lost a step.
Well, did he lose a step, or is his offensive line letting him down?
I think it's, listen,
Are they more susceptible?
It's possible. I'm willing to listen to maybe there's more pressure, more consistently that, that it's harder to consistently get away from. I'm just saying, when I see someone closing in on him, I used to just always assume he was definitely not getting tackled.
Right.
And that hasn't been the case this year. They've been getting him a little bit.
When his numbers are down, obviously they're 1-3. And I mean, to be completely fair, that felt like a pitiful performance by the entire team on Sunday.
Pretty bad.
That was
pretty
not
bad.
good. Not for a standard, like you said Ravens Chiefs and you said AFC Championship game.
Let's do it.
That would be like not the standard of game that you would hope for, right? Like you'd be like, that is not what we expected it to be at all, right? But that game didn't live up. Lamar did not play well.
Derrick Henry didn't play well.
If he's injured, if it's coaching, if it's whatever, is it a conversation that he's lost a step or has he been figured out?
I mean, I think he's been in the league long enough that I'm not saying, like, usually if a guy gets figured out, it's like between year 1 and year 2, or like it's pretty early on where like, oh, this is kind of what this guy is.
Right.
I would argue maybe you've seen that a little bit with like between like Jordan Love last year when he had the half a year where he was really good, and then seems like teams sort of started playing him a little bit differently. So I don't know if it's a figured out thing. I do think with his skill set, because he's 27 now?
Let's look.
I believe 27 years old. It would make sense
28.
if the speed portion of his game, which was so electric and so ahead of everyone else. And again, this is not to say that he's not still a top 4 quarterback in the league, because I think it is. I think it is Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and Lamar Jackson, right? Those are the top four guys in the league, in my opinion. So whichever order you want to put them in, I don't want to have that argument right now. But I do think I'm not saying he's not great still, but just like watch him this year try and escape pressure versus any other time in his career. And maybe there's other factors. Maybe the hamstring's been an issue longer than we know about. Maybe the offensive line is letting pressure in different ways, and he's not used to escaping it in those ways. I don't know. He's getting tackled by pressure that he hasn't been getting tackled by in the past.
Well, and that hamstring's going to keep him out for a couple of weeks. He did
and
say...
it's a thing that can linger. Hamstrings famously linger.
Soft tish, big ish. There's also the issue, too, that... What?
Never heard that before.
Well,
must be a Sydney thing.
No.
No?
We don't get soft tish issues there.
Is that a UNK thing?
Yeah, a lot of soft tish
Plus-
problems out there.
Soft tish in the K.
Yes, very much so. But Lamar did say after the game that he was like, I felt something pop. I pulled myself out of the game. I wasn't gonna try to get myself in there anyway. But is your concern strictly from what you saw against Kansas City, or is this the first 4 games of the season?
No, it's so far this year. This
is an offense that put up 40 points in week 1, 41 points in week 2, 30 points in week 3.
So I want to be clear. It is not his overall ability as a quarterback.
Yeah.
It is specifically his escape ability under pressure. He is like he's still playing the position. That's why I made sure to talk about the top 4 thing. He's still playing the position at a super high level.
So it's one of those concerns like what is his next step if he has lost that step, right? Like how does he evolve to become the next version of what he is as a quarterback?
And I know this is
notably like being a Panther guy, Cam Newton could never do that. Once he lost his ability to
was done,
bully
right?
ball people, he was not a good enough strictly passer and not enough signal caller, quarterback of the offense to maintain his status as an MVP quarterback. He had some good years still in Carolina there at the end, but then it really fell off the wheels in those last few years at New England and then when he returned back to Carolina.
Yeah.
When you think about guys like Randall Cunningham, like he kind of fell off the wagon for a little bit and then he
reinvented himself
because he just became strictly a passer who was mobile enough in the background to be able to make some plays.
And listen, I know this is the low-hanging fruit, right? Because this is the guy he always gets compared to, and I don't love it. But I think about, and the losing of a step was for very different reasons, if in fact Lamar Jackson has. But think about Michael Vick in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't the same level of athlete that he was in his early Atlanta days. I'm thinking like 04 Madden cover when he was basically a cheat code, right? Both on the field and in the video game.
He was a great passer. I mean, he was hitting bombs to Deshaun Jackson.
Yes.
Like he had the ball getting out to
when
people.
When he got to Philly, he turned into the quarterback we all hoped he could be under Andy Reid, right? So like I think Lamar's already closer or past that as a passer in general of the offense than Vic was at that point. So I do think there's still a path forward to him, like I said, winning a Super Bowl, being an MVP candidate, like being a top 4 quarterback in the league. But I think it might start to look a little different if in fact he has lost a step over the first 4 games of the season. Like I would just challenge you to look at him under pressure. He's not like how many times, like I know you could see it in your head. Yeah. How many times have you just seen this guy get pressured from the outside, just spins out of it, and then either takes off or he finds a guy down the sideline. Like we've seen that
step forward, step back roll.
Yeah, he steps in and then spins out and he's gone.
Yep.
I've seen him try that several times, especially over the last 2 weeks, not just against Kansas City, but especially the last 2 weeks, because I was really paying attention to it starting then, and I'm like, he's not getting out of those. He's just not spinning out of it the way he used to. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's the way the pressures were designed. I don't know. But I started thinking about it 2 weeks ago, and then I saw it against Kansas City before he got hurt, and I go, I don't know that this is – I think the next stage of Lamar's career might look different than what we're used to.
Well, and obviously you don't want to run your mobile franchise quarterback as much as you have to.
Yeah.
He may still be able to have those type of moments and opportunities when they want to, have him scramble out, do bootlegs, whatever that case is, be Lamar. Like, don't limit him on that. But the design runs and everything that he is so used to running in that offense, it's going to probably look a little bit different, especially coming off an injury. And no one will know better than the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson, because he's got to go up to Harbaugh. He's got to go up to his coaches and play callers and be like, I can't do that anymore. Not saying that he wouldn't do it, but he's like, we can't be doing this as often because my body can't handle it.
Yeah.
I'm not the same player that I was, whatever. But the only people that will know that in the building are Lamar Jackson, the offensive coordinator, and Harbaugh.
Absolutely. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little Michigan State with Graham Couch. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. It's Hurrdat Sports Live.
Lease the 2025 Nissan Sentra starting at just $275 a month with 0 down. Style, efficiency, and savings made simple at Edwards Nissan. Or sign and drive the 2026 Nissan Rogue Rock Creek. Lease starting at $409 a month. Built for every adventure, backed by Edwards' trusted service and transparent deals. September savings mean Nissan deals at Edwards Nissan.
Yeah, it's funny. We played at Penn State last year when I was at Louisville, and we got rolled. So I also lost to them twice last year. But I'm, again, looking forward to a huge challenge and just getting back on the road. And, wherever Nebraska goes, even though Penn State draws great crowds on their own, but when we go places, it's sold out or near sold out. So I'm just excited for that type of atmosphere again, and like a game that has a lot on the line, and the fans are going to be super into it both ways. Not that surprising because she's so good and talented. It's just somebody that we know is going to get their kills. It's just, can you slow her down? I don't know. How do you try to slow her down while maintaining everybody else on their team? I think those are the questions we're answering this week and working to figure out.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Punt return. Here's Tullis. And he steps in. Childs is in the shotgun. Pressure, he steps away from it. Pumps. Now lets it fly. And it's caught. Michael Masonis. Touchdown, Michigan State. Working the opportunity for Michigan State to give it to Tal Tolliver again. No timeouts left for Youngstown State. And Tal Tolliver's going to race in and put it away.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's awesome. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Graham. Excuse me.
Whoa.
Got a little thing.
Did you get emotional thinking about Sparty there?
I did. I got real emotional thinking about our next guest, Graham Couch, columnist for the Lansing State Journal. Apologize about that, Graham. Got a little scratch in my throat. How you doing this morning?
I'm well. That's the way a lot of MSU fans sound when they think about the defense.
Oh, that's tough. All right, Graham, let's just start.
Let's start there.
Let's start there. So, us being Nebraska-based and right here in Omaha, we have a lot of our own consternation when it comes to how we feel the national landscape values and looks at Dylan Raiola at quarterback, because obviously we see him at a higher pedestal than where many people put them. What's the fan base of Michigan State feeling when they're going up against Dylan with the pass defense that the Spartans have showcased through their first couple of games?
Yeah, I don't think it's specific to him at all. You're right. I mean, nationally, I don't think the perception of him is probably what it is locally. And part of that, though, is I think for MSU, their problems have been more about them, and they've faced a couple of good quarterbacks already, both against USC and Boston College, who frankly ate them up, and so they're not. I think that's just one of those givens. If you've got a capable, good quarterback, they're concerned and they're worried that if they can't disrupt the timing and they give you all day, that people will actually confuse Patrick Mahomes and Raiola like that. That's I think that's the concern. But it's not a disrespect to him as much as there's just overall real concern about the defense's ability to disrupt any decent quarterback.
So, Graham, as you kind of try and diagnose what the issues have been, you mentioned they've seen a couple good quarterbacks. already this year. Does it feel like it's a scheme or a systemic issue? Is it a personnel issue? Like, what have you seen that? I guess the question is, does it feel fixable over the course of the season?
I mean, to a small degree, it probably is. I think the hope that it is, because otherwise it's going to be potentially a long season. I mean, they're coming off a bye, as every team gets, and then that sometimes is an important week where you improve a little bit. But there is some concern, I think, from portions of the fan base about Joe Rossi, the defensive coordinator. But he's been a pretty good coordinator a couple places, and I just don't think he's an idiot. So I think it's the Jimmies and the Joes. And when you look at Michigan State's, sort of the way they constructed their roster and the priorities this last offseason, they clearly spent their money and their resources improving their offense, which they've done, both at receiver and on the offensive line, which needed an upgrade to survive this year. And so they're not a place that had unlimited resources this year. So, I mean, we'll see what that looks like in the rev share era. And I know Matt Rule's talked about this as well. And, sometimes you don't have the ability to just go buy the best defensive line in the country like Texas A&M did or whatever. And that's sort of where they are. They've got a couple, decent young pieces that they like. They've got, frankly, I don't even know what their level is at linebacker and in the secondary, because I think they do have a couple decent pieces. But when you can't get to the quarterback, everything looks bad no matter what you have. So you don't even, it's even hard to evaluate. The problem with what happened last week was they were also or 2 weeks ago when they played against USC, they also weren't very good against the run. And so that had been something they'd been okay at. And like, if you can't do anything, then you're in trouble.
So you mentioned the offensive line there, and it's been a place, obviously, with Ramil being reported he'll be out for this upcoming week and probably a few weeks into the future. And then, you've got some guys there, particularly at the guard spots, that have struggled a little bit over the course of the season. What's been the issue on the offensive line? Again, is it a Jimmy and Joe situation where you just don't have the horses, or is it a thing where, hey, they still just need a little bit of time to gel together?
Well, so this will be an interesting week for that because, you guys are aware, Nebraska has not been great at stopping the run, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not been the strength. And this has been a Michigan State team that has been noticeably improved. Now, everything's relative. Like, they were just a really bad offensive line last year in all phases. And they have been that at times quite a bit in the last decade. So the improvement, they've been able to run the football from time to time pretty well. Not maybe as consistently as they'd like. I think some of their bigger problems have been in protection of Aiden Childs. And they're lucky he's as fleet-footed as he is, or they'd be in real trouble. So yeah, I think it's a line that is improved, that's okay-ish, that's not the reason they can't do things as a team, but it's not where you need to be to compete, to contend in the Big Ten and push people around and win enough battles. They're just so. I think they've got a really good offensive line coach. That's one area I'm pretty confident in their coaching ability. I just think they've still got work to do in development and recruitment, and they have had some injuries, but they're better depth-wise than they were a year ago. So they can withstand them, and everybody has injuries. It's like one of those things. If you've got a full complement of defensive backs, then that's the news, not the fact that you got injured defensive backs, the way football goes these days.
Graham, when looking at kind of how this contest may shake out, you mentioned the running game for Michigan State and just getting ready for it. Is the general vibe that you're getting leading into this week, coming out of that bye week, that this could be more of a matchup that Michigan State allows Aiden Childs to try to, win the game and play like a quarterback duel against Dylan Raiola and just, keep the ball in his hands? Or is it a slow it down game, limit the possessions, and just run the ball and try to get out of there as fast as you can and see how low scoring this one can go?
Yeah, their offense needs to help their defense out in certain ways, but I don't, and if they can run the ball, and they can have, length of possession and really do that to be the team, that would help. I think what they need to do is score points on offense, and they've got a good offense. They've got some explosive ability on offense, and if they're scoring, then that's fine. It's a real question this weekend exactly how explosive Nebraska is relative to what this defense is. I mean, I think the way Michigan State sees this week, at least a lot of MSU fans do, and they're probably right on this, is it's a telling week. Not so much that they have to win the game. It's a road game at a solid team in Nebraska. But, I think a lot of us watched Nebraska play Michigan and saw that, they did not win the battle at the line of scrimmage. And so if you don't hold your own there against Nebraska, then it's probably going to be trouble a few other times this year. And so it's about how it looks, that it's competitive, that it looks like two teams that belong on the field against each other. And I think offensively they'll be okay. Whether they can run the ball or not, I mean, they should be able to based on what Nebraska's shown. Nebraska's pass defense has been really good. MSU's pass offense has been their strength. But they ought to be a good enough pass offense at this point from what we've seen to still, have their moments there. So I think it's about just being productive offensively. And there's, I know there's a lot about complementary football, but at this point, the complementary football is scoring points.
Graham, how do you think they'll weigh? You mentioned it there. Their pass offense for Michigan State has been their strength, obviously going up against the strength of the Nebraska defense in the secondary and their pass defense. How much do you weigh? Because this is a conversation we've been having a lot in Nebraska, honestly, is how much do you weigh kind of who you want to be and trying to take advantage of what you perceive the defense of the opposing or the weakness of the opposing defense to be versus, hey, this is what we're best at. This is what we're good at. We should stick with that.
It's a good question. I think if they can run the ball, they'll, they like to do that. They like to be balanced. The thing is, where they are potentially, their difference makers are in the passing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about where they're
like Nick Marsh, really, really good.
Yeah, Nick Marsh is an NFL player. He just got to, it's just going to take a minute until he's, he's only a sophomore. But he's got a chance to be a first-round pick. Aiden Child is, it's hard to know exactly what NFL scouts think of him, but he's a greatly improved player who has all the tools. And so that's he's got pro ability. I'll put it that way. I don't there's consistency things. There's things he's going to have to show over time whether he's that player. Omari Kelly, the receiver that they picked up from Middle Tennessee State, been in Auburn early in his career. When I talk about upgrading the offense in the offseason, like he's a legit. If that's your number 2 receiver, you're in really good shape,
mm-hmm.
guy. And they have some other speed guys and real strength there. And so I think you got to, if they're going to play, they've got Michigan still on the schedule. They've got Indiana. They've got Penn State. If you're going to compete with those teams, those guys are going to have to be special at times. And they've got to be guys who it doesn't matter who the defense is. And I think when I look back at the best Michigan State teams people think about, they've had players, and if you go back eras, guys everybody's heard of, the TJ Ducketts of the world, the
mm-hmm.
Plaxico Burress's, Charles Rogers. Didn't matter if it was Alabama or whoever was on the field. Those guys were a problem. And I think the passing game for MSU has some athletes where that is the case. And that's got to show itself if they're going to have a chance to punch up and pull upsets.
So, Graham, you brought up you weren't sure how NFL scouts would think about Aiden Childs and his ability. I'm curious how Michigan State and their fans feel about Aiden Childs. Obviously, gotten off to a pretty good start this year. What's the thinking around Childs just in East Lansing and how people are receiving his performance early in the year?
Yeah, it's changed completely from last year in terms of how he's perceived. Last year I think people were pretty disappointed by it.
Mm-hmm.
He came in with a lot of hype. He was a true sophomore. He was still 18 years old when the year started. He's really young for his age. Everybody's young for their age. Young for his grade, I should say.
Yeah.
But he was, I think there was disappointment. There was also disappointment because, in the whole Jonathan Smith arriving, transfers coming in, transfers coming out, Michigan State lost Sam Leavitt, who was at Arizona State, who's a really good quarterback. and they got Childs, so there's that comparison there. And but this year, I mean, it's turnovers are his big issue. You know, that hasn't been a problem this year, and you know, he's done a much better job of keeping his eyes up and making plays, and you know, I just think people are beginning to trust that he's the player he's shown. And now at this point, they played a USC team that, you know, I don't want to say the strength's not on defense because they have some guys on the defensive line that are tough, but they've beaten a Boston College team that's sort of fallen apart. So it'll be interesting. These are the moments where he's got to kind of prove that. But people are beginning to trust him, and people like him, and I don't think any MSU fan thinks he's their issue.
Graham, when just looking at this game from the Michigan State perspective as well, when it comes to just the totality of the entire season, where does this Nebraska game rank, or just where is it valued among some of the other games, either that came before or after it? Is it one of those that the fan base is looking at as maybe a turning point game, that they're going to learn something about their program? How are they valuing this comparative to the rest of the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a swing game. Now, they've said that about other games, but that's sort of what this season is. And as other teams show themselves and things unfold, you know, they're 3-1, and they have UCLA next week, who's awful, coming to East Lansing, right? So at the midpoint, you're 4-2 at worst going into the second half. But the second half of the season is at Indiana, Michigan at home, at Minnesota, Penn State at home, at Iowa, and then you got Maryland at a neutral site, sort of Ford Field. So, like, people don't know where the next win's necessarily coming from, and that includes Nebraska. But they view Nebraska as a more beatable team than probably at least three of the teams left on their schedule. And so when you're talking about a team that hasn't been to a bowl game in a while, hasn't been playing from above 500 in a while, it's sort of a you know, I don't say it's a pivot point, but it's a game that matters. It's consequential. If you win it, it can potentially change a lot about, you know, what your season looks like. If you don't, people are wondering how you get to 6 a little bit, and so that's how big it is.
Graham, I'll get you out of here on this. You mentioned kind of the recent struggles of Michigan State football and kind of some of the things they've been going through and the challenges that the schedule presents in the back half of the season. What constitutes a successful year 2 for Jonathan Smith in East Lansing?
They need momentum, and that can look at several different ways. That could be they got to get to a bowl game. They got to get to 6. I think that would be problematic. But when I say momentum, it's got to feel that way. You know, it's losing that last game to Maryland wouldn't be great if that, you know, or if it was the Michigan game is going to be really, really important, and partly that they have a chance to win it, but also in how he treats it, how they look. I mean, last year they went to Michigan and they were sort of pushing Michigan around early in the game. They had probably his worst coach game, a couple disastrous decisions that turned the game, and Michigan wound up winning pretty comfortably in the end. And then there was a scuffle on the field, and you know, Michigan State's AD at the time complained about it to the Big Ten office, and when the Big Ten office did nothing, MSU kind of put his tail between his legs, and people did not appreciate the fight. Like the hatred for Michigan around these parts is real, and they didn't feel like Jonathan Smith understood the rivalry, and they just felt like they let themselves get bullied. So that game is going to determine a lot of. It's a home game of sort of the psyche of the fan base in this season, but you know, they've got to have momentum coming out of it for it to feel like a success. And I think you'll sort of know it when you see it. And that the minimum of that is a competitive day against Michigan and 6 wins, but it might even take slightly more.
That's Graham Couch, columnist for the Lansing State Journal. Graham, appreciate the time as always. I hope you enjoy the game this weekend, but I hope you enjoy it a little bit less than we do.
That sounds good. Thanks for having me.
That's Graham Couch from the Lansing State Journal. That is the show for today. Austin, thanks for joining me once again.
Happy to be here. Turned out to be a good one. Rico hang out down there, Loper hat and all.
Rico hanging out down there. Just
Shane, my therapist.
Doing stuff.
Yeah.
Shane's just out here.
We're out here, right?
We're out here, right, Shane?
I think so.
That's where the magic happens.
In the Snoopy house, it does.
It's true. He does have a little. We call that his little Snoopy's treehouse over there. Looks like he's just, you know, From Peanuts? Looks like he's got his little Snoopy house.
You do have a nice little Snoopy house there.
He's got his little dog house.
Yeah. Oh, that's mean. That's mean.
He's not in the doghouse. It looks.
You just said he's in a doghouse.
No, it looks like a doghouse.
And where does Shane in right now?
Well, it doesn't mean he's in the doghouse.
But he's in a doghouse.
Metaphorically speaking. I don't know. We'll be back tomorrow. Hurrdat Sports Live.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.